Welcome, Chad nerds and dorks. I'm sitting in a depressing, empty room, but that's okay because we're going to fill it with love. And it's also going to eventually have cool stuff all over. There'll be cool crap everywhere, dude. I promise. I promise you that. You could believe that. So we're going to open it up. It's going to be open forum. A lot of fun when we do this. This is so weird. I'm not used to this new setting where I don't have my books and all that. But we got one little bookshelf over there, just kind of chilling, just being a little lonely over there. And hopefully it's not too echoey. Maybe when I get more books and stuff in here, it's not gonna be echoey. I don't know. I don't know what y'all think. What's going on? What to do with it? What it do? But we moved. So we got a different situation, you know what I'm saying? We got a different situation. So we're going to return to regularly scheduled broadcasting now. Everything's back to normal for the most part. It's going to be like a neon flamenco behind me. That's going to be cool. But I ordered that, and it won't be here for like 2 weeks, so whatever. So you're going to have to put up with barren. We're going to pretend that we're Reformed Puritan Protestants with this barren wall, this whitewashed walls. So we're Presbyterians the next couple weeks. I'm going to infiltrate the Calvinists, pretend to be a Calvinist. Just kidding. Won't be doing that. People say, well, why don't you put icons behind you? I've never felt like it's appropriate. I don't care if somebody has icons behind them. That's their decision. It's just not my vibe and ethos to be like, oh, because we do a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? There's, like, if my channel was devoted to Orthodox stuff or something, maybe it would make sense to have an explicitly religious setting. But as you guys know, I am not your guru. I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not a spiritual father. I'm a person who engages in philosophical apologetical argumentation. And that has its limits. It only goes so far. It's necessary. It's useful. But it is not a replacement for church, or there's no such thing as e-church. Doesn't exist. If you only have people online that are your friends or whatever, well, then that's the best you can do. But ironically, some of the people in the circles of Orthodoxy who criticize what we do say that we promote an online e-church. That's ironic because all those same people are the ones that locked the churches down and promoted online e-churches, which I never supported, ever. So most of what you hear about me is false, believe it or not. And that's because there's a lot of geopolitical pressure that's put on a lot of the sectors of Orthodoxy for different reasons. But that's not today's topic, although it does relate to it. Father John Whiteford will be coming back on the broadcast very soon, and he's going to give us an update on a lot of the geopolitical machinations and intrigues and what's going on over in the Ukraine, the Okra. As we in the South, we said, what's that country, Okra? Oprah Winfrey? No, Ukraine. The Ukraine. He's going to be telling us about that. And as you guys know, we had a couple good open forums this last week, thanks to Rachel and Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, and the stirring up the hornet's nest of the Protestant world on Twitter. And as you guys know, I have also stepped into the fray, the madness. Did you know there's an even lower tier beyond what you've all experienced and what we've all experienced on Twitter, Discord, and YouTube? These are now elite spheres because I have dipped my foot into the tepid, stank cesspool waters of TikTok live streaming. Believe it or not, there's a whole other universe. It's even worse. But it turns out in that universe, there's a whole heap of people who need to hear about Orthodoxy. And we are underrepresented, guys, over on TikTok. Yes, I know about that it's a Chinese surveillance app. You don't have to tell me all that. I've been a conspiracy tinfoil hat man since 1999, I think. 98, 99. Anyway. But even though it's low tier, there's a lot of people over there. So look, we're getting kind of like ousted numbers-wise by the Muslims and the evangelicals and the Calvinists and the atheists. And everybody over there is just balls to the wall crazy, right? They're nuts over there. They're a bunch of kooks and goobers. But I feel like we got to be over there. So I'm going to start doing a little more. Well, here's the thing. People are like, what do you mean TikTok's for short? No. You can live stream on TikTok. That's the thing. So I did a 3-hour live stream over there. And, man, I'm telling you, it's rough, dude. But, I mean, it's kind of gotten to where, as you guys know over here, the Twitter audience, shout out to everybody on Twitter. We're going to go to the open forum here in a second. For a while there over here on Twitter, we hardly got anybody, right? Nobody was coming over here because basically, there's nobody else to debate. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, who else are we going to? So it just got into basically crazy land, and we could only have an occasional wine mom spitting bars, spitting Franzia out of her mouth through her Virginia Slam poetry. Boom! Why didn't I think of that damn joke a long time ago? She's throwing out some Virginia Slam poetry. Remember that? Anyway, so basically we had exhausted the tank of Twitters. Apologists, so to speak. But it seems like now what's happened is there's a lot of crazy things going on over on Twitter. And I've gained about 20,000 followers in the last 6 to 8 months. So Twitter has blown up for me, which is good. I mean, inside an air fryer, is that what it sounds like? So I think now with Rachel and these other people stirring up the hornet's nest, we're probably going to get some more feral people, and they're welcome to come over here and be feral. We don't shy away from that. We're used to it over here. We're not afraid. We don't get scared of the rabies apologists, basically. But look, if it runs out, guess what? I'll do some dang some TikTok open forums. You know what I mean? So people always say, when you going to debate Destiny, dude? Look, we offered Destiny debates like 4 times over 4 years. Destiny always said, I will not debate theology. I only care about politics. I don't care about politics. So I'm not going to waste my time debating Destiny on Trump or some bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. I don't care about debating Destiny on that. That's what I'm saying. So, if you do want to support the show tonight, we're going to open it up here in a second. My nose is itching because we still got some allergies over here where I moved to. Unfortunately, you can't get totally away from it. It is not cocaine, even though I did move down south of the equator, basically. Not really, but to me it feels like it. If you're in Tennessee and you move down to Florida, it's like you're in Ecuador or something. Now, we down here with Tristan in a mud hut. We got that battery. We got that 9-volt battery powered modem. Speaking of Destiny debates, remember that nightmare debate when he debated with Tristan? I mean, I try to tell Tristan, look, this dude doesn't. I don't think he debates in good faith. Maybe he does more so nowadays. I don't know. I don't keep up with Destiny, but Destiny seems to be all over everywhere. Why is this dude debating everywhere? Like all of these prominent people. Didn't he debate Zizek? What the heck? Why in the hell is Zizek? So basically, there's no such thing as intellectual academia anymore. Not that I was a huge Zizek fan, but it just seems a little odd But I guess we help bulldoze that whole notion. There's the respectable, academic sphere, and then there's YouTubers. Right. Well, I guess we help bulldoze that because, we've been out here debating. Yeah, Zizek slurping and Jay sniffing. That's what I'm talking about.
This is the slurping of the capitalist pay system. I will do the sniffing and the slurping.
Exactly. By the way, I'm putting together a stand-up routine, and then I was listing all my impressions because I think if I'm gonna do my stand-up, it's got to be a little impression heavy because that's kind of my forte at this moment. But I started thinking, man, the only audience that stand-up would work for is our audience, which is okay because I can promote our audience to come to the stand-up event. But like if I go out and do stand-up with a bunch of normies, dude, they don't have a clue what's going on. Nobody know who Zizek is. Y'all don't know nothing about it though. All right, let's open it up. Enough of this yip-yapping nonsense. So tonight's topics, and we will stick to the topics. If you don't stick to the topics, boom, you're out of here. I'm going to delete your butt. Topics are, as you guys know, things like the deity of Christ, the Trinity, biblical theology, Old Testament, New Testament relations, Judaizing, Hebrew Israelite. We can bring up that stuff. I don't care. Church history, the law, works-based salvation, sola fide. This sola is the Protestant stuff. Tag, presup, classical apologetics, evidentialism, logos, logi, uncreated energies, ADS, palimism, comparative religion, Calvinism, predestination, Christology, the energies, the Vatican, church history, papacy, ecumenical councils, canons, the EP schism, orthodoxy, epistemology. All those are on the table tonight, and anything adjacent to those things you may also bring up. It's not restricted to that specific list. I'm just giving you an idea. Don't call in about crazy stuff. We're not here to talk about nanotech tonight. We're not here to talk about James Bond movies. We're not here to talk about whoever who will definitely call in and start talking about that stuff. No, not tonight. There's a million live streams all the time where we talk about that stuff. Call in on that one. That's not tonight. By the way, you can still get the philosophy course with Richard. That's available below. We also have a event coming up with Richard. I forgot to put the thing. If you know, we did it last year on entrepreneurship, become your own business person and all that. Self-motivated, self-sovereignty, that kind of stuff, which is all good, especially as things get crazier. That is coming up this weekend. I'm trying to remember who's involved in it. Corbett, me, Benny Wills, usual people, Richard. But you can also get the philosophy course there at the Autonomy Agora Marketplace. And then I forget whatever. We got other events coming up. But basically, tomorrow night, Jamie and I are going to do the full Pierce Brosnan era of Bond. That's going to be a lot of fun because I did a couple of those maybe 3 years ago. And Jamie didn't feel like she wasn't feeling good. So she didn't join me. And basically that's mom Bond. We're talking about mom core era, right? Mom Bond. Pierce Brosnan is mom Bond. You start talking about Sean Connery, and that's grandma Bond. That's your aunt's Bond. No, we're talking mom Bond. That's Pierce. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. Deep analysizations, Bayes lit analysizations of the Pierce Brosnans. That's going to be fun tomorrow night. And by the way, I've gone back and rewatched these, found all kinds of little nuggets, little golden nuggets, little golden eye nuggets that I didn't notice. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, it's open forum. Remember, I know I'm going to have to tell you a million times, so I'm just going to accept it. I'm just going to accept that y'all aren't going to remember to unmute. And that's okay. I still love you. Even sassy Silk Spectre, who I see up to the front of the line. What's up, Silk Spectre? And we'll go to you first because we've had you on many times. And you are a polite and where'd you go? You dipped off. Why did you dip out? There you go. Stay in here. What are you doing? In and out. No. We're going to go to you first because I like you. You're a nice person. You're fun. One of our Roman Catholic friends. So remember, when we go to you, got to hit unmute. We're going to be planning and trying to get some more stuff going on with Tim Gordon. So we have a lot of Roman Catholic friends. We love our Roman Catholics. We vehemently disagree, but we still love them. So this disproves the idea he hates Roman Catholics. He hates them. What's up, Silk Spectre? What's on your mind tonight? Maybe, is this thing acting weird tonight? Every time I want to do this, Twitter starts acting weird. And I don't care about, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I don't give a damn. It says that you are here. Let me invite you to speak. How's that? Can you come on now?
Hi, can you hear me?
What's up? What's on your mind tonight?
Hi, good to talk to you. I don't been on many times. I think I only remember twice, but yeah, thanks.
Well, I'm trying to be friendly, so I mean, you want me to go back to being mean? I can do it.
I don't know if there's anything to go back to being mean for. Well, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate that. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm a little tired from moving and getting things settled and all that, but I'm raring to go. It's been, I think, at least 4 or 5 days since open forums, so I'm ready to go. Now, last time I DM'd you the Alexandria document. Did you get a chance to look at that?
I did, but it's been a bit of a. That was a while ago. It was about 2 months ago, so I can't.
Well, that's okay. I have it fresh in my mind.
Perfect. Well, if you want to refresh my memory on what you want to talk about, that'd be great.
Why I want to talk? Well, I mean, you called in, so we can talk about what you want to talk about. But the reason that I bring up the Alexandria document is because, as I remember saying to you, this to me is one of the strongest, more recent admissions that we have with papal approval that the modus operandi of the church in the first 1,000 years is basically what the Orthodox Church has been complaining about for a long time. So we have about 90 to 95% of the admissions, not everything, but pretty much everything that we as Orthodox would complain about is basically conceded in this Francis-approved commission.
Great. So why are you still complaining then?
Well, for multiple reasons. I mean, if you watch Tim Gordon's stream that he did the other day, I would agree with Tim that this is not really a genuine union, because if this document is now, I mean, this is not his argument. He was just agreeing that this is really a geopolitically motivated union. It's not really about theology in the final analysis, because Francis is really there to promote things like the multi-faith Abu Dhabi Chrislam, center and all that. So why would we want to join with that just because Rome is admitting our theological argumentation from the last 1,000 years? And the other point is simply that if this document is true, then Vatican I's not true.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty strong assertion. I don't see how you can say that.
Wait, what's a strong assertion?
That if this document is true, Vatican I isn't true. I don't see how that follows.
Well, did you read the document?
I did, but like I said, I didn't get that impression, I guess, and this is your opinion, so if you want to tell me how you're qualifying that.
Well, I don't know if I'd say it's an opinion. I mean, the document is arguing that Palomism is an expression of the Orthodox Church. It's not an opinion in the Orthodox Church. It's admitting that the synodal system was the normal way that the church was governed the first 1,000 years. And it's admitting that, canonical appeals do not prove universal jurisdiction. And so these are some of the strongest arguments that were used by Roman Catholics to, bolster the claims of Vatican I. So basically, this is admitting that a lot of what's in Vatican I isn't really the case. So how are we supposed to still accept Vatican I?
Well, I don't know. It's admitting that. I think that's a bit of a jump you're making there. I think that, again, I'm not a theologian. You're obviously much more learned than I am. I did get the impression that there was a strong desire, it seemed, on the Catholic side from those documents to reconcile. And I'll also just come back to something you said earlier where you were saying, Pope Francis is interested in this. I don't even exactly know what you called it, but it seemed to be kind of suggesting that he's interested in some sort of ecumenistic world religion.
I mean, yeah, he signed with the imam the statement that is the basis for the Vatican-approved multi-faith center.
Mm-hmm. And you don't think that's a good thing?
Do you think it is?
Well, I don't exactly know what center you're speaking about, but...
Well, would you like to look at the video that I shared from the center? It's on my Twitter right below this.
Sure, I can do that. I can't do it right now.
Right.
Unless you want to have someone else on it, and I'll quickly go watch it and then come back.
Well, so I would say, actually I would recommend that. So pop out and then I'll bring you back on. And it's I retweeted it, so it's at the top of my Twitter feed. And I will also show it to the audience here real quick.
Right. Well, just before we do that, and sure. I'm happy to do that, I do sense, listening to a lot of your video or content, I suppose, that you seem very against that particular avenue of reconciliation, that I guess you could call it maybe an agenda that Pope Francis has put forward to kind of gather up and reconcile people that are not out, or that are outside the Catholic Church. I'm just wondering why that's a problem. Isn't that kind of what he's supposed to be doing?
Well, it's a problem if Roman Catholicism isn't true. So that's the main issue, is that if the papacy is true, then I guess that would be his job to do that. Sure. But as I'm saying, the admissions in the Alexandria document really are night and day with what's in Vatican I. Vatican I is really strong. It's an ultramontane council. It doesn't have anything to do with synodality. It has to do with the universal, unilateral authority of the Roman bishop. And the prior document before Alexandria, you go back to 2016, I think, the Chieti document, it's the same commission basically under Francis. It admits at the very bottom that the Roman Church did not operate with unilateral, universal authority in the first 1,000 years. Well, that's essentially what Vatican I is all about. So why would we as Orthodox accept the doctrine of Vatican I if it's admitted that it's not the praxis and modus operandi of the church in the first 1,000 years? That's the entire Orthodox argument. And this means that papalatry is an innovation.
Papalatry. That's interesting. I'm not a legal, I don't know. I listen to these streams sometimes, and you seem to get very legalistic, and it's funny to me because that's often as criticism.
Well, hold on, legalistic. Roman Catholicism has a giant book of canon laws. So how is this legalistic?
I know, that's what I was just about to say. That's why I find it sometimes funny how the Orthodox will, accuse Catholics of being very legalistic, and then kind of take this track to bolster their defenses, I suppose you could say. Again, I'm happy to pop back again. I'll give you my opinion, but it's going to be a very unlearned opinion.
Well, that's fine. Go watch that video. I'm going to play it right now. It's not very long. It's only like a minute and a half, and then we'll come back to you and whatever questions you want it to go to.
All right. See you in a sec. Bye.
Yeah, and let me play this for you guys. I think you guys on Twitter will be able to hear it. So this is the multi-faith center that they built And it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. They built it, and we said for years they were going to do it because Francis signed the joint declaration with the Grand Imam. I'm sorry, but we don't have a joint faith with Muslims and Jews. There might be elements that we have in common. We do recognize a higher power and this kind of stuff. But just because there's some commonalities, it doesn't mean that we have a joint Abrahamic faith. Paul says that only those who are of the faith of Abraham are sons of God and sons of Abraham. Jesus says, you are of your father the devil if you do not believe that he is the Son of God and if you do not believe in the Trinity. And so, for example, after 6 public debates with prominent Muslims now, it is very evident that they do not have the same faith as we do. They are Arian, or worse than Arian. Do you think that the Nicene Creed, does it speak as if the Arian and the Nicene Creed believer have a common faith? Of course not. Well, then how much more so do we not have a common faith with Muslims or with Jews? It's just simply not the case. There is no such thing as generic Abrahamic monotheism. There is only Trinitarian theism. Now let's watch this video and see. So multi-faith, multicultural, everybody's blending together in this giant facility with 3 different buildings that's supposed to give the impression that everybody has the same faith, and they all meet together in the center, lighting these weird candles or whatever that is, bringing in the frickin' cubes from Transformers, energy cubes or whatever that is. And so now there's 3 lights, like some kind of weird false triad or something like that. So, again, the fact that a person has some... I mean, let's say I'm talking to a theistic Satanist, and they say, well, I believe in one God, I just believe it's Satan. Oh, well, I guess we have the same faith because you believe in one God, and we believe in one God. This is called the quantifier shift fallacy, right? It's a famous fallacy. Because everybody has one mother, we all have the same mother. You see, it's a quantifying shift. And that's why it's a fallacy. And so this faith center was built with the blessing of Francis, and it's inspired by Francis's document on human fraternity, because we're all brothers, you see. But this goes even further. It doesn't say that we're all brothers just because we have a common father, Adam, or something like that, some sort of generic human brotherhood. This is actually saying that, well, with Jews and Muslims, we share a common Abrahamic faith. And this underlies all of the heresies involved in natural theology, which lead to perennialism. The Allspark. That is the Allspark. Yeah, exactly. The Allspark. Bringing in the Allspark energy cubes over here. Optimus Prime. Abraham worshiped the Trinity. He didn't have to use the terms Trinity for all you slow people out there. But Abraham worshiped the Triad. That's why in Orthodox iconography, everybody who knows icons automatically knows the theology better than Roman Catholics and Protestants. And so I did a lecture, everybody should go watch, years ago, where we looked at how the Triad is an Old Testament doctrine. And if you saw the debate with Daniel Pikachu, we brought that up. Here it is. This is from almost 5 years ago. It's a 3-hour talk on the Trinity in the Old Testament. And I realize now I'm going to have to do a whole other redo of all this course, because now that I've been reading all of the Jewish scholars, we have a mass of Jewish scholars now admitting that, yeah, the Old Testament teaches not a generic Unitarian theism. It teaches a distinction of persons in God even then, right? Multiplicity of personae, according to Summer. Schaeffer's books talk about this. Siegel's books talk about this. And so the point is that as Summer? No, not Summer. Schaeffer? No, Boyarin, another one of the Jewish scholars. As Boyarin says, early Christianity is really just a conservative form of Judaism that is being consistent with the Old Testament texts and the fact that they teach multiplicity in God even throughout the Old Testament. Because obviously, do you think nobody had seen all the angel of the Lord passages until what, the Church Fathers? Until Justin Martyr? No, of course, you have multiple passages that teach there's Yahweh, there is the angel of Yahweh, in whom is the name of Yahweh, according to Exodus 3 and 23. And then who's also known as not just angel, but also the one like a son of man, one like the Son of God. Over and over and over throughout the passages. And then in many, many, many passages, the presence of this other Spirit. The Spirit will speak. He speaks. So the Spirit has personhood, not just in John 16 and 17, but also throughout the Old Testament. He's a divine person, identified as a divine person. So does this mean that Abraham confessed with his lips the phrase Trinity? No, he doesn't have to. Okay, nobody's arguing that. But you'll notice when I debated Trent made a huge mistake theologically when he said that the Old Testament teaches a generic Unitarian deity, and the New Testament tacks on this new doctrine of Trinity and deity of Christ. Oh yeah, exactly. That's why your church is heterodox. You just proved to me that all of your Vatican II theology is heterodox and proved my position. You understand, when Trent admits that, the whole debate was over. Because he's just being consistent with Abu Dhabi Faith Center, that we all have a generic God that we worship. Well, maybe you guys do, but everybody that's Orthodox and really believes it, truly Orthodox, they know that the icon of Abraham eating with the Rublev icon teaches the Trinity. So you understand, you're being taught a different faith if you're not being taught the Trinity in the Old Testament. Now, I know that some of these Roman Catholics say, well, there is a kind of Trinity in the Old Testament, but this is something that we know later. No. Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. Moses wrote about me. So this is not like some far off thing. And here's the irony. I remember asking Trent, I was like, Trent, how do you do apologetics against Muslims? Like, if you're not going to argue the way that I argue against the Muslims, and the way that every Orthodox person would do apologetics against Muslims, like, you're undercutting your own position. This is not that difficult. I mean, you may think I'm being legalistic or I'm being obsessive. I don't know what terms you think it is. I mean, this is just straight up patristic theology. I mean, when Justin Martyr argues with Trypho the Jew, he makes the arguments I'm making. When the New Testament writers argue to prove deity of Christ and Trinity in the Old Testament, they make the arguments you hear me making. Where do you think I just make up these arguments about the Trinity in the Old Testament? Like I just invented this speculating? It's common patristic apologetics. And if you look at the joint declaration of the Vatican with, I think it's the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, it was approved by John Paul, or I forget who, maybe even Ratzinger. I mean, if you look at Ratzinger's book, Many Faiths, One Covenant, I mean, he affirms all this same nonsense, that the Old Testament is still valid. And he implies it's valid in a salvific way. And all of this is to say that we all have a common faith. We all have a shared Abrahamic faith. No, we don't. This is as silly as, imagine St. Basil or Athanasius saying, we have a common faith with the Eunomians. It's literally no different than that. Go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, no, so I just watched the video. It's, yeah, I would agree. It's a little strange. I don't really get the, like, glowing lights part or, like, what that's supposed to symbolize.
Well, that's not even the strange part. The strange part is the theology behind this. Do you think that we have a common faith with Muslims?
Well, I think that there's grace to be found in other faiths, but God has that grace.
No, that's not what we asked though. The question is not, are there graces for everybody in the world or in other religions? The question is the faith, the belief system, the theology. Is there a common theology that we share with that makes us children of Abraham with Muslims and Jews?
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, well then you've now just rejected Vatican II's theology of Nostra Aetate.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have. That's literally a Nostra Aetate.
Where is it in Nostra Aetate?
I mean, it's a very short document, and it explicitly says that we have this. I mean, the whole faith center is called the Abrahamic Faith Center.
Yeah, I mean, I think this faith center, from this very cursory look you've just shared with me, I mean, it seems like a pretty bad idea. I think people.
It's based on Nostra Aetate from Vatican II.
I don't know what you mean based on.
The theology, it's there. Go read it. I'm not trying to be rude. We're going to move on, though. But go read Nostra Aetate. It's about 5 pages. And you'll see that everything I said is absolutely true. But we're going to move on. So let's see who's next. UTDXD. What's up, dude? Now, before we go to UTDXD or whatever, let's look up Nostra Aetate so people don't think I'm making it up. So it's like people don't know the Vatican documents. I'm not being a dick. I'm just saying that it's just a fact. The church regards with esteem the Muslims. They adore the one true God. Living, merciful, all-powerful, etc. Just as Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself, submitted to God. And then it says, of course, they don't acknowledge him as God, Jesus as God. But the implication here is that you are supposed to esteem radical anti-Trinitarians and those who hate the deity of Christ. So you understand that Muslims, historically at least, think that it's shirk to say that a man is God. There's been quite a bit of warfare. You might have heard of this stuff over the years, over these topics. But it explicitly references the faith of Abraham, and that's why Francis and countless other... I mean, why do you think Francis goes and prays in the mosques towards Mecca? As did the supposed trad Benedict XVI, by the way. So let's get rid of this notion that Benedict was some trad. Pope prays toward Mecca. Pope Francis prays alongside the Grand Mufti in the Blue Mosque towards Mecca. And so did the rad trad Benedict. By the way, Benedict is not a rad trad. I've read about 6 of his books. Has all the same modernism as all the other Vatican II gaggle. So totally nonsense, totally mythological faith, mythological LARPing that Benedict is a trad. It's just not true. I mean, he might have thrown a few bones to the trads, like his motu proprio for the Latin Mass, but so? I mean, you don't understand bureaucracy and throwing bones to people to keep them. Oh, he's so trad. He let us have them. I mean, let you have the Mass. I mean, anyway, what's up, UTDXD? I guess he dropped out. Where'd you go? Kelton Shaler, what's up, dude? You understand?
Oh, hey.
Hey, what's up, dude? Yes, man.
All right, sounds good. First off, shout out to jaysanalysis.com. Those part 2s are worth it.
Thank you.
I just had a few questions of, I guess, trying to synthesize different points and arguments I've heard you and others make in discussions. So I'd love to hear your feedback on these.
Okay.
I've heard one criticism leveraged against Islam is that God has to be essentially an eternal creator because of how they argue that he has that aspect. So creation has to be eternal for him to be an eternal creator, if I understand that consequence correctly. In comparison, I've heard a separate argument independently from that first point for the Trinity by saying that, well, there must be three persons in God for God to exhibit the characteristic of love. And if I understood these 2 points right, this seems like a parallel argument, is that, the Trinity must be true because in order for God to be love, he must have someone else to eternally love. Therefore, there are multiple persons. Are these 2 aspects like parallel at all?
Right. So in other words, love couldn't be just a self-referencing thing. It necessitates some kind of other. This is an argument that you see in Losky, Andreev, Staniloy. So the idea is that not just that love itself, but actually any attribute to be exercised requires something other than the first principle to exercise that attribute. So the exchange of love, the movement in the triad of all the energies really requires something more than just a generic unity, because if it's just God from all eternity, where are any of these energies directed? There's no created order. There's nothing else. There's no other hypostasis. So in the triad, you have a unique position where there is an eternal exchange of the eternal attributes and energies, in the sense of what Palamas calls the energies that are true from all eternity versus the ones that are only applicable to the created order. So, for example, the power of creating, God eternally has the power of creating, but he doesn't exercise for all eternity the power of creating. Otherwise, there's eternal worlds, right? And we don't think that. We think that God created ex nihilo. So in order to have ex nihilo, you have to have, and God having free will, you have to have this notion of God having, in some way, capacities that he doesn't have to exercise unless he wills to. And so when Palamas cashes these out, he talks about the energies or operations that are the case or are exercised from all eternity that do not require a created order, like glory or love, right? Because the love is exchanged between the persons of the triad, Father, Son, and Spirit. By the way, love is not identical to the person of the Holy Spirit. Love is an energy or an operation or an attribute that all three share. So it can't be reducible to one of the persons. So in order to have a truly free God, you have to have some distinction in different types of acts, and this Palamas makes the distinction, but actually goes back to Athanasius. If you read Florovsky's essay, Creation and Creaturehood, or Athanasius and the Doctrine of Creation, that essay has a really good argument about how the essence-centered distinction is basically in Athanasius when he makes this distinction between different types of movements and actions in God. For example, generating a person, Father generating the Son, is clearly different from the action of creating a world. So not all of God's acts, so to speak, are identical. Creating the world is an action proper to will. The generating the Son is not by will. So the Trinitarian argument there is that you have a unique position with the Trinity whereby God does really manifest and exercise various eternal attributes. And yes, I understand that in a sense they're all eternal, but they're not all eternally actualized. Some of them are, however. There was no point, for example, at which God was not manifesting his glory. Glory wasn't dependent upon a created world. But divine providence is an energy and operation that does require a created world. So God was not always actualizing divine providence, you see. So there has to be this distinction. Otherwise, we're caught in all these stupid positions of various modal collapse arguments. Just like when the Thomists collapse God into pure act. So that's the essence-centered distinction as it applies to the Trinity. And that's why Unitarian conceptions are always typically fraught with this problem. Now, there are some Muslim schools that don't believe in a kind of strict ADS. Some of the schools do, and some of them don't. So, like if you're talking to a Shia, they're going to be basically Neoplatonists, right? They're going to follow Al-Ghazali and a type of Neoplatonic emanation type of thing. But the traditional Sunnis, who are what everybody's mostly encountering, classic Sunni stuff, they have their own kind of distinction between attributes and essence and in Allah, but that's not the essence energy distinction. And also, it's not really cashed out as a distinction between the action of creating and Allah's essence. So it just doesn't get that sophisticated typically. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So, Trinitarian theology has articulated two classes, or essentially elements, like you've described, that explain this distinction. But
well, to be very precise, Palamas speaks of three planes of action. So there is the action of generating, and that's the movement in the Trinity of the Son proceeding from the Father, and the Son being generated from the Father, and then the Spirit moving from the Father through the Son. That's an eternal, and returning back to the Father. That's an eternal triadic movement. That is the first plane, and that's the personal origins or hypostatic origins or hypostatic properties plane, Plane, that we can describe, that Palamas describes. The second plane would be the movements of the energies from all eternity that are not dependent on the created order. And so that would be the movement of the energies that, like I said, like love or glory, that were always also manifesting from the Father through the Son and in the Spirit. Those are eternally manifesting uncreated energies. And then you have the uncreated energies that only apply to the created order. That would be also typically characterized as the economia, like divine providence, right? This kind of stuff, or the action of creating, or the action of walking on water. I mean, there's all these actions that are unique to the created order that are not actualized from all eternity, you see. And you can't just say that, well, the actualizing is the created element, but from all eternity, Christ was walking on water. No. That's an action in time. It's not an eternal from all time. That compromises the reality of the second person of the Godhead in time and space. It really is the second person of the Godhead walking on water as a divine energy or action. And that's different from the action of creating the world, which is also a divine power, obviously. So not every divine power is identical. Clearly. Well, creating the world is not the conflagration. Clearly. This is so dumb. Obviously. But when you have this radical modal collapse ADS position, you're stuck with all these stupid ideas that walking on water is the same action in God as creating the world and the same action as destroying the world. So anyway, those are the three planes. And I'm not, to be really precise, that does not mean that the third plane of the economia, that's only restricted to the operations of God proper to the created order. The eternal movements in God that are not dependent on the created order also enter into the economia. So it's not just providence and creating and walking on water. It is also eternal love and eternal glory that also come into the economia. So those are the three planes: hypostatic origin, eternal manifestation, and economia.
I see. And that was excellent. Just to steelman Islamic apologetics, you've argued that they have this modal collapse because of the common schools. From your experience, do you believe that these minor schools you mentioned would be, if they started to imitate these planes, would they be able to resurrect and solve these problems, or is there something in the foundation that?
No, because actually, typically, the traditional Sunnis tend to say, when you start to ask things like the dependence relations in Allah of the attributes and their relation to the essence, they typically say things like, it is not permitted to ask beyond this point.
Okay, excellent. I had a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so once again, two separate arguments I've heard from two different Christian apologetics. I wanted to try and reconcile these.
Okay.
In your Trinity, your response to Mr. E on the Trinity years ago.
Oh yeah.
Which I honestly is probably the most important video on YouTube. The point you keep rehashing as a foundational point argument is that we cannot worship creatures, and so when Jesus accepts worship, that is a sign of his divinity, because you're allowed to worship God but not creatures. I have heard a separate apologetic argument for veneration of Mary and of icons, The argument being that we are allowed to worship maybe people in authority or spiritual authority in maybe worship or venerate in proxy to God. And so you may venerate the saints or Mary in proxy to, the energies of God that they exhibit, or with respect to the fact that God has established them in positions. Is this a veneration versus worship distinction? Are these arguments incompatible? Could you clarify this concept of when we can worship creatures or not at all?
We cannot worship creatures with the worship proper to God at all. And so the only reason, as you noted there, that we venerate creatures at all is because of the participation in the divine energies. So if we are reverencing the body of a saint, what makes that body holy is the presence of the uncreated energy. So, but that is still not, we're not worshiping that saint, because worship proper is only given, as St. Cyril says at Ephesus, one adoration to the whole incarnate Christ. So Christ gets a unique adoration in worship, which is the worship proper to God, because he is, as Cyril says, it is the body of the God-man. And so in that regard, it is worthy of worship because he took it upon himself and deified it. However, in the saints and these kinds of, connections, they're certainly connected to God, but we do not venerate the body of the saint with the same adoration and veneration that we give to Christ.
Fantastic. Excellent. I had a question about, I guess, low church Protestantism.
By the way, the video that you referenced for everybody, I forgot about Mr. E. Yeah, this was a thing I did, like I said, almost 4 or 5 years ago now. Is Jesus God? Is God a Trinity? And this goes through a lot of the Old Testament texts that don't just show triad, but basically we're working through the theophanies. And so in all of these Muslim debates that we've been doing, the good part is that I've gotten way deeper into this. So I know a lot more about this topic than I did in 2018. In 2018, 2019, I knew quite a bit. Not bragging, just saying. The Islamic debates have actually forced me to go way deeper into this topic, and thus all of those, rabbinical Jewish texts that I've been reading by modern and old Jewish scholars that back this up. I mean, it's just like so wild when you actually get into it. That's why I bring it up with the Muslim debates so often. If you guys go watch my opening statement of the Kikachu debate, I cited all of those texts, and there's actually more. I didn't even list all the texts in there, but those texts are amazing. I mean, there's just this whole other genre of academic literature over here that's basically modern Jewish scholarship saying, hey, and they're not Christian. They're just saying, yeah, okay, so it looks like, a lot of the Old Testament texts do demonstrate a multiple personae or hypostases in God that is not a generic Unitarianism. So, and then they're actually admitting that the generic Unitarian argument is not really there until Maimonides. I mean, that's pretty hardcore admissions, right? So, and you're like, I'm sitting here reading these books, and I'm like, okay, so why wouldn't you be a Christian then? Like, you're basically admitting all these points. And you're like, well, I'm not a Christian, but they basically have all these points. So, a lot of interesting admissions going on in scholarship and unbelieving scholarship. That's pretty wild. But I think I'm going to have to basically just do brand new Trinity lectures. I think that's the way to go about this. I mean, I'm certainly not worthy to do that, but by God's providence, all of these Muslim debates have actually given, I mean, when I made this video 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, I probably knew about, off the top of my head, I probably could recall about half of the theophanies, versus now there's like a whole other 50% more theophanies I didn't even think about or know about. I forgot about multiple theophanies in Judges, right? Not just with Manoah. There's an amazing theophany with Gideon where it says Yahweh turned his face to Gideon. What? So, I mean, when you really start digging into this, and by the way, the summer text, Bodies of God in Ancient Israel, that one's amazing. Now, he's not a believer. He's a liberal. But he's like, okay, look, let's just be honest. The Old Testament text, they have Yahweh, angel of the Lord, and spirit. I didn't even think about, throughout the book of Genesis, the first 2 chapters of his book are actually about all of these places in Genesis where Abraham builds an altar, the stone gets anointed, they rest under the oak of Mamre. So trees, rocks, stones, pillars are being anointed. Dude, that's all theophanic manifestations. It doesn't mean that they're worshiping the sticks and the trees, but it is absolutely incarnational. This is a holy tree, right? Because Abraham stayed over here. It's anointed. This is a holy rock, is anointed by freaking Jacob. Puts his head on it. That's all incarnational principle that speaks to unique presences of Yahweh in inanimate objects, holy objects. I didn't even notice. Trees and holy rocks in Genesis. Of all, I mean, I should have totally picked up. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's like I totally missed all this stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Is that once again the same energies argument as the saints and relics?
Yes, he's admitting he's just a Jewish scholar who doesn't believe in Christianity, but he's saying the unique manifestation, theophanies, and presence of Yahweh are everywhere in the Old Testament. And they're not creatures. So, yeah, exactly. God is uniquely present in some way. I don't remember if he uses the term energies, but it's that idea.
So speaking of your Hakikachu debate, I had a question about 3 styles of argument I heard relevant to what you and Daniel brought up and your mention of this Jewish scholarship. And I wanted to ask, are these 3 different trains of thought? Which of these are fallacies? And could you articulate as to why these are good or bad strategies? The first was appeal to authority that you mentioned, where Daniel says, scholars all agree that the Quran is perfectly preserved. And your counter was, it's a fallacy to appeal to authority. Just because a PhD says it means it's true. So that's number 1.
Well,
number 2,
hold on. So it depends on what you're trying to do with the appeal. So appealing to authorities is not a problem. But I mean, let's just think about this in a really simple context. The sheriff is an authority on lawfare. The sheriff says that Bob over here committed the murder. Sheriff's an expert, therefore Bob committed the murder. That's not how it works, right? The sheriff is an authority, and so his testimony might be used. And just think of a courtroom setting, right? But the sheriff's testimony has nothing to do with proving. It's not a proof. It's an evidence. It's an attestation. Secondly, it is not the case that that scholars universally admit that the Quran is somehow accurate and preserved. There might be some secular scholars that admit that, but to claim that it's like universal, that's ridiculous. Most scholars are unbelieving. They don't believe in some special transmission of any religious text. That's ridiculous. So by the way, what is the evidence that he has that most scholars or universally scholars admit and accept the accuracy and transmission and historicity of the Quran? He just said it, and he said you could read, he cited a couple people. Okay, well, I cited a couple people, so what, right? And I mean, transmission and historicity in the age of the Quran has nothing to do with whether it's true. Furthermore, academic consensus as a proof is also a fallacy. So there's 2 fallacies, not just citations of authority as a proof, but also appeal to consensus is a fallacy, because it has nothing to do with whether what's in question is true or false. You could bring that forth and say, look, let's say I'm having the debate on, the veracity of Matthew, or let's say Plato, something less controversial. And let's say for the sake of argument, the majority of scholars believe that the Timaeus was written by or recorded by Plato and his students, and so it's an accurate transmission. I'm just speaking theoretically. Okay. Does that prove it? Of course not. Because we all know the majority can be wrong. And authorities can be wrong. So it doesn't function as a logical proof. It's not a strict proof in a logical sense. It can be an attestation, right? It can be evidence, but that's not the same thing as a proof, obviously. And you'll notice in the debate that after about the third or fourth fallacy that was mentioned, it's like he didn't even know those were fallacies. Like he had never heard this stuff. So there's a difference between how you use something like citing authority it's not citing authorities itself, it's how you try to use it that makes it either a fallacy or a proper use. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so then part 3, the counterpoint would be when you, in your opening statement, you brought up this new Jewish research, and you said, basically, here's a line of new academic thinking that has brought up certain right. And I guess that is valid because you're saying this is, one school of thought that is here. That doesn't.
All that, as I stressed multiple times, all I was citing the Jewish scholars to show is that first century Judaism is not a monolithic Unitarian enterprise. That's it. And so here's all the scholars admitting that. Does that maybe Daniel can bring forth some mega proof that shows that no, actually it was a monolithic enterprise. Okay, maybe he can. So it's just citing it. It's how you use them, right? Did I say, here's all these Jewish authorities today admitting that there is a kind of Trinity in the Old Testament, therefore the Trinity's true. I didn't say that. That would be a dumb argument. Why would I go to them as if that would prove the Trinity?
So it can testify to it, contribute, but it cannot permanently.
Yeah. What happens in a courtroom when they bring in an expert witness? Does the whole court, the judge just say, well, you're the expert witness, case closed. You decided that he's the guilty murderer. It doesn't work that way. That's an attest. He makes the case. Then the jury decides, you see, right?
Yeah. And then the counter to, or the opposite of the appeal to consensus, I think, was when Daniel mentioned, the Bible, no one agrees who wrote the New Testament or whatever. There's a disagreement. And I think your response to him was, no, it's also a fallacy to cite a disagreement as a argument. Does that follow? Did I understand that?
I'm not saying that's false. I'm just trying to remember. A disagreement about what? Remind me.
I think he was saying, 50% of scholars say the New Testament, Mark didn't write Mark, and 50% say, yes, Mark wrote Mark, or for example. Is that also a fallacy?
Well, it's a
non-consensus?
It would be just a fallacy of irrelevance. I mean, what if we found, what if we polled all the people in my neighborhood and many of them believe that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2?
Oh, yeah.
So, your neighbor. So I guess if 55% of my neighborhood believes that 1 + 1 = 10, in my neighborhood, then that's the case. It now does equal 10. You see how silly it would be, right? It'd be like, what?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right. So, so disagreements amongst people has absolutely nothing to do with what's true or false.
Okay, fantastic. I had one last question about low church Protestantism, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I think a lot of Bible-based low church Protestantism would build their Sunday morning worship services around 1 Corinthians 14, where Paul basically says, hey, when you guys get together, one of you has a psalm, one of you has a prayer, one of you has words of encouragement type of thing. What type, so I guess the question is, what type of gathering do you and Orthodox interpret he to be mentioning? Is this divine liturgy? Is this a separate, the daily prayers and vespers?
Right, so I think that there's a couple things going on here. Number one, just because Paul is talking about this sort of what would probably be a more open situation for people who are moved by the Spirit to do this or that doesn't prove Protestantism or like charismaticism, because this is at a point in the church when there is still ongoing public revelation. So that doesn't continue. Once John the Apostle dies, there's no more public divine revelation. There could be public divine revelation in this intertestamental period. So this is a unique time period when the church is transitioning out of being primarily centered in Jerusalem and primarily Jewish to now being more and more so primarily Gentile. Thus, throughout the book of Acts, this is that crucial period. So, Church of Corinth still is still in this phase where there is what we would call maybe charismatic sort of Pentecost types of stuff going on. Now, in the Orthodox Church, we don't totally deny miracles like, I don't know, like maybe some cessationist Baptists or something like that. But we wouldn't conclude that there's still public divine revelation, right? That I think there's just not. I mean, once, the faith was once for all delivered to the saints. And so there's no new public revelation, right? But the other point I would say is that just because Paul is stating to the church at Corinth that there needs to be order for the sort of spontaneous movements of the Holy Spirit, I mean, if you look at the Feast of Pentecost in Acts 2, even that is not chaotic. It's not gibberish, because in the very book of Corinthians, Paul says God's not the author of confusion. And in our church, in our tradition, we would believe that there's still a liturgical worship going on, right? It's not like there's no liturgy. It's just everybody just, chaos and do what you want. Paul is trying to give order to a situation where there is still instantaneous motivation and movement of the Spirit, right? Like if you read the book of Acts, remember when like Agabus is suddenly inspired by the Holy Spirit, right? And so he takes a belt and says, "You will be bound like this belt." And he was moved by the Holy Spirit to do that, right? Paul doesn't want the instantaneous movement of the Holy Spirit in this intertestamental period to disrupt the liturgical service of the church, which if you read that whole section in Corinthians, right, from 11 up, clearly that is what's happening, because people are getting drunk at the liturgy, at the Lord's Supper, right? So, So it's a liturgical celebration. He talks about the altar, but it doesn't tell us the liturgical service, which is why we believe in tradition, to know what the liturgy is. But so I think all of that's going on.
Fantastic. And then real quick, a critic might observe the iconostasis as okay, why do you have an iconostasis that people can't go behind if the curtain was torn in two in Matthew 27?
Because if you look in the earliest, the architecture of the earliest churches in the 1st and 2nd century, they had the equivalent of that, which are called communion rails. And they're clearly there in the earliest churches.
Then what is the Orthodox understanding?
What that means is that, the iconostasis is the same thing as the communion rail in the West. And what that means is that communion is closed. And so it's true that the veil is rent, but that's a specific time in the service when the royal doors are opened. That happens in the service, it's opened. So the veil being rent corresponds to the point in the liturgy when the doors are open, then you get communion.
Ah, nice. Okay, I hadn't thought of that. That's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that, the veil's rent now, so basically you can just go do trick or treat. Go door to door trick or treat communion, dog, because the veil's rent.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Because you had mentioned that in your Tulip series. You said, these house churches were estates that were converted to basilicas.
Yes, everybody can look that up. Yeah, that's.
Altar.
I would highly recommend early. And of course, we always sort of have to bring this up because there's just this weird assumption, and I used to have this assumption when I was a Protestant, right? When you see house church, you think of that as like, oh, that's the Bible study I went to after high school when I was playing basketball, right? House church. Well, that doesn't mean that it's like a low church, strip mall. Paul's got a strip mall. No, it means early church, like a villa converted into a basilica. That's what that means. And early church architecture shows this. And that's why it's liturgical worship that you can see in the earliest days of the church. Here it is. Now, this is a Catholic guy, but it's the same principle here. So, because this article went around on both Catholic and Orthodox websites. It's also over on Ortho Christian too, but there you can see it on this Catholic website making the argument that the ancient Mass or the liturgy in the house churches was not as informal as many think, and you'll notice there that This is the church at Dura Europos, which is fascinating because Dura Europos also has the synagogue with the icons in it. Earlier than this, 2nd century, this is 3rd century church, 200s, where they have a baptistry, courtyard, and then the service area. And if you get the Hugh Wybrew book, he's actually got pictures where they show like the rails and the Eucharist, where they would have had the Eucharist and whatnot, the altar. So anyway, good questions. Yeah, great questions, sir.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Bed safe keep. What's up, dude?
Hey Jay, thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
I have 3 questions, 2 being clarifying questions and 1 being like an application question.
Okay.
My first question is, can you discern the definitions between worldviews, paradigms, and ideologies?
I think most of the time when people are using the terms worldview and paradigm, they're referring to the same thing. At least when we're using that terminology in the domain of philosophy, typically we're just talking about the basic beliefs and assumptions that people have in terms of epistemology, ethics, and metaphysics. But an ideology could be more specific. That could be somebody might have a singular ideology of being a radical Marxist or a single ideology of being a radical feminist.
And I only ask that because I hear you say things whenever you're debating about the Orthodox paradigm being the superior, theistic paradigm.
Well, that's because I think that ultimately at that level, the reason that we do tag over here is because the arguments are not ultimately about evidences or the interpretation of evidences. They're about the entire paradigms. So that's why we do that.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that you can't do evidential argumentation. Sometimes you have to present evidences. For example, if somebody says to me, well, what are the evidences that you think Jesus is the Messiah? Well, I may not go immediately to tag to do that. I'm going to say, well, there's a ton of messianic prophecies that point to the Bible being inspired and fulfilled in him. So those are evidences, you say.
So the second question is regarding to the method of developing those worldviews or ideologies or paradigms. Basically, I know that I've heard you say something to the effect of that orthodoxy is not a dialectical method of progression, and this maybe goes and ties into my third question, which we know about the, Milner, Fabian, open society type worldview. How is theirs, progressing in terms of development versus orthodoxy? And basically, the fundamental question is, how do you develop your worldview in such a way that, you're always going to outcompete other worldviews that are competing?
Yeah, so I would think that there's a bit of a equivocation there on the word developing. So, an individual might want to study a topic like philosophy and learn about worldviews and kind of figure out what they believe. That's different from the notion of developing theology in a sense of evolving theology or progressive philosophy or progressive movements or Open Society Institute and all that.
Gotcha.
Different uses of the word. So, if I can develop my worldview in a sense of figuring it out. That's not the same thing as something evolving over time. The papacy wasn't really there in the first 1,000 years like Vatican I says. It developed into that. Okay, that's different than me. It's just using the word develop in a different sense. That's different than me figuring out my worldview.
But you think theologically, orthodoxy, is it progressing still in terms of it's not being static and it's its presuppositions are static, but the elaboration of those are developing. And then I'm asking, the Milner Fabian thing, their presuppositions are static, they're developing.
I really no. I don't think the Orthodox faith develops.
Okay, right.
The ecumenical councils really just clarify and explicate what's already there. So if by develop that's what you mean, yeah. But if by develop you mean like,
I do mean by develop. I mean like in the Milner Fabian, the one world, one true religion, like where they grab all the religious religions of the world and make one religion. And I may have the term wrong. Is that an ecumenical, or is that I always confuse the two terms.
Yeah, I mean, they want to steer and develop the religions into a controlled geopolitical tool of a one world religion, absolutely.
Right, and so, my basis is like, if they are doing it in a dialectical manner, which I thought that's essentially what they're doing, is that they're using a form of dialectics, controlled dialectics, such that if
that is true, yeah.
Such that if orthodoxy is coming and they have their worldview in place, they have their structure of bureaucracy, and I know I'm not using the right term there, but also there's a structure of bureaucracy for Milner Fabian, and obviously it's like a power dynamic thing, but in terms of truth, like arriving at truth and arriving at an audience discerning between orthodoxy and this one world religion, how would they know to choose one paradigm over another? Not because of like being called to God or anything, but just on the basis of the facts or the basis of the paradigm.
I think that the position of the elite is one of pure pragmatism, and so they will hire countless academics from universities to study religions and then present reports, present papers on how to best steer religious communities in the direction that they want. So I don't think that it requires them to necessarily master the religion in a true sense or believe it, because I don't think, for example, if you look at most of the academics that are pushing liberalism and orthodoxy, for example, I mean, they obviously don't really believe it or live it. They're just hired hands that are there. For example, everything that we were talking about for many, many years is now coming out in this recent IOTA conference, which is the 2025 reunion conference to promote Nicaea 2. Remember when I talked about this, and I was a conspiracy theorist. Here it is, the International Conference in Rome in 2025, promoting the new Nicaea, how to unite with the Roman Catholic Church. And it's all the usual Fortumite goobers and academics, including the arch-druid Rowan Williams, as well as all these other clowns. And so there it is right there, exactly what I said. So are you asking how do they know where to steer it, or how do they, I mean, their agenda is very clear. Women priests, Skittles everywhere, and then move all of that into Francis's Skittles domain.
Yeah, like I watched David Patrick Henry, and he was talking about how they kind of like co-opt orthodoxy terms for their technologic, religious beliefs, where they're like, oh, we can talk about theosis or apotheosis, et cetera, in these terms. That's basically like a technical version, a more pragmatic version of what you're saying. And what I'm saying is, how would someone essentially look at that and be like, oh, orthodoxy was just this old way of thinking, and so since we have 21st century technology, that means the Milner Fabians, they don't know it's Milner Fabians, but the people who are co-opting orthodoxy terms, this is how the Bible is actually supposed to be progressing. And I think, didn't the Pope say something about, it seemed like he even believes that, not dogmatics, but like the theological positions are meant to be progressed over time, because humanity.
No, I think he believes that. I think he believes that the morals and the dogma progress over time. So,
right, which is insane, right? I mean,
yeah.
Anyway.
So, Good questions. Yeah, we're gonna move on. Let's see. Moving on to Blood and Rain. What's up, dude? And by the way, guys, if you would support the stream via the super chat function, super chats are through Streamlabs now. If you like what I do, if it helps you, you can support me via Streamlabs. You can ask your questions there in the Streamlabs link. It's a little bit of an extra step, but it's not too difficult. You can put in whatever amount you want. We got a few super chats I'll go to here in a little bit. And thank you to you guys a couple of people I think super chatted while I was gone. You can always super chat and I'll just read it on the next show if it gets missed. But there you guys see that the Church of the Third Millennium towards Catholic Orthodox Unity, put on by all the Fortimites, put on and basically sponsored by the State Department, people from the CIA. Mike Pompeo has supported and tweeted out a lot of these people. So a lot of this has to do with geopolitical motivations. Very public. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's well known. And they want this new union with Francis, which is part of what the Alexandria document is about. If you watched Tim Gordon's stream the other day, you'll notice that he did one stream where he was like, what is all this, what's the Roman Catholic synod and synodality about? And I was like, I can tell you what it's about, Tim. It's about this. Synodality and primacy, admitted to be not done in the Roman Catholic way in the first 1,000 years, according to Francis. So there you go. Why are they pushing synodality? Oh, I can tell you why. Because they want to have, as we've been saying, a union with Rome. And why are they mad at me and other people in the Orthodox Church that are not into ecumenism and this? Because we are the ones that stand in the way of this being pushed. It's not rocket science. It's not hard to figure out. Why does everybody hate you? Because I'm calling this out. No one else is talking about it. Now a lot of priests and people talk about it. And that's great. But I was talking about this actually in 2007 and 8. And then I was doing podcasts in 2014, 15 on this. They're still up. So, vindicated. Oh, but you're a conspiracy theorist, you're an evil person. Oh, you're so bad. Oh, I know. Sure. Okay, yeah. By the way, where are you guys at tonight? Everybody's being stingy tonight. Stingy. Y'all want me to just work for free? The labor is worthy of his wages. What's up? I can't work for free. Support the work right there in the super chat function. Also, if you want to support the work in another way, get books and stuff. Get the 660-page red book. Has all my theology and geopolitics essays and philosophy essays in one book. At the website, signed copies. If you go to the shop at the website. So in this book, by the way, if you don't know, in the red book, there's about... Let's see, how many pages are... The first 100 pages or so is essence, energy, distinction, apologetics type stuff, typology. The next several hundred pages are critiques of Roman Catholic stuff. Then the next couple hundred pages are critiques of Protestantism and Calvinism. Then it gets into philosophical stuff, geopolitical stuff, a bunch of old essays on... psyops and controlled dialectics and all that kind of stuff. So if you want the red book, get signed copies at the website in the shop, as well as all the other books that are there, Jamie's books, Hollywood books, and all that. Who's next? Are you there?
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for doing this. I just had a quick question about, I'm sure you've answered this question before at some point in the past on a Twitter space or YouTube, but I find myself having a lot of conversations just online and in training groups that I'm in with Protestants who ask what I mean in terms of early church father teachings. And I know there's a line of apostolic succession from the early church fathers to now with a wide range of literature for the context of the Bible. Have you ever outlined a reading list for people to sort of read the church fathers from at the time of the book of Acts until now, sort of how the gospel applies to each epoch with each, equivalent heresy? Like, is there a place to start? Like, some people have told me to start with the Desert Fathers. Some people have told me to start earlier, St. Athanasius. But I was curious how you would map that
I mean, it depends on what route you want to go in terms of what you're wanting to study. I mean, if you're wanting to study are the earliest church fathers Protestant, then I would. Can you mute when you're not talking? Then I would start with Ignatius, Clement of Rome, Justin Martyr. I would read those early guys and then see what you see in them. But if you're wanting to get into patristic theology, then I would start with On the Incarnation of Athanasius, and then I would read the Orations of St. Gregory Nazianzus, and then I would read On the Holy Spirit by Basil. So no, I don't typically like lay out some sort of historic track or course that a person should read. If you don't want to dive directly into the patristics, I would say read volume 1 of Yaroslav Pelikan's Christianity and the Christian Tradition. Volume 1 is a great introduction to the history of ideas of the Church Fathers. Right.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So for those in the audience that are curious, that's this book here, which I have actually lectured through this book. It's an old lecture on the channel. I don't remember what I called it. But I did lecture through this book. So it's part 1 and a part 2. If you want to subscribe, let me see if I can remember what. By the way, there's a bunch of Trinity lectures already up. So what did I call that book or that talk? Early Church Heresies, I think. I think it's this one right here. Gnostics, Charismatics, and Early Church Heresies and Fathers. I think that's my free half of the first book of Pelikan's Emergence of the Catholic Tradition. So if you want to watch that first half, here you go. There's that. You can subscribe to get the full half at my website. Also, that guy brought up the 5 year ago Trinitarian response talk, and that video is right there. And I appreciate that. I'm glad people really like that one. A lot of people have become believers in the Trinity from this talk, so it's had a lot of effect. I hear a lot of people over the years have said, "Hey, thank you so much for that Trinity talk that you did." Yeah, man, good to hear. Let's move on. Is that all you had? Do you have something else? Sybil Ahinger. Thank you guys, if you would, in the chat. Also, like and share. Support us via Super Chats if you'd like to. Everybody's broke tonight. That's okay. I still love you guys, even if you're broke. Sybil, looks like it's having a hard time for you to connect. So Patrick, what's up, Patrick? You want to pop on? Project Pat, what's up? Juicy J, Project Pat, what's up?
Hey,
Hey,
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just was gonna ask about your point about Pope Francis. There is a faction that I'm kind of been a part of ever since he, came into power and whatever, that believes that he's the end times false prophet, that his job is to bring in the one world government or the one world religion in congruence with the one world government.
So hold on, I got a question. So when you say a faction, you mean of traditional Catholicism or Protestant? What do you mean faction?
Yeah, Catholics that believe that. In particular, I don't know if you've ever seen William Tapley, Third Eagle Books on YouTube. He's been on there for about 15 years, and I don't know, I came across him years ago and read some of his books and whatever.
Hold on. Are you talking about the boomer that sings on his keyboard?
Yes, actually. He did. That was some of the early ones are that. That's right. But
So hold on.
anyway.
So, well, I mean, I'm gonna try to be nice. I don't want to make you mad, but I mean, I made fun of this guy for years, but
Oh, right. So did
but
Anderson Cooper.
well, yeah, I may, but for different reasons than Anderson Cooper would. But so, I mean, I remember his stuff, and you know, a lot of what he talks about is pretty obviously influenced by evangelical premillennial stuff. And the problem is that whether you're Roman Catholic or whether you're Orthodox, I mean, the Second Ecumenical Council pretty much forbids any kind of premillennial stuff. So you've got this guy influenced by dispensationalism and Protestant premillennialism. How could that be? That's not Catholic or Orthodox.
Okay, I see what you mean.
I mean, Francis can still be an evil person, but that doesn't mean that William Tapley is correct.
Okay. Well, I understand what you mean. Have you seen the apparition of Benedict the 16th to the Colombian nun? Have you seen anything about that?
No. I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to be rude, but look, guys, I mean, Roman Catholicism, man, is, look, all this apparitions and Protestant end time stuff. I mean, guys, that's not authentic Christianity. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean to you guys. I'm not dissing. I don't hate you guys, but I mean, this is just clown level stuff, man. I mean, do y'all not know about? I mean, maybe that guy was even trolling me. Doom and gloom. Y'all know this is doom and gloom. Listen to Third Eagle's tune. This is the boomer at his keyboard. And he sings about like the third eagle, and it's just the most ridiculous boomer evangelical but Catholic end time stuff. Listen to Third Eagle's tune. Doom and gloom coming soon. I'm not joking.
Very soon, you'll see signs up in the sun
And the moon. He's even got the Yankee boomer nasal. Doom and gloom. Listen to Third Eagle's tone. So, I mean, it's just even worse if it's a Yankee boomer.
and gloom. Very soon,
Very
rapture
soon.
comes at night or noon.
Rapture comes in under. Sorry. Nobody, if you're Orthodox or Catholic, can believe in the rapture. This is a goober. Why are y'all following goobers? Come on. Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to 30 Goals tune.
Doom and gloom. Very soon, if you're ready, you will meet the bride and groom.
I mean, cringecore, I have to admit, might have a little bit of Third Eagle influence to it. You know what I mean? I mean, I used to get buzzed up like 14 years ago, and we would just die laughing watching this stuff, dude. This is funny stuff. 13 years ago, yep.
Don't be dumb. Rapture comes long before the seventh trump. Don't be dumb.
Oh, he said Trump, dude. Maybe he is a prophet. Maybe he was talking about Trump back then. Whoa, dude, my mind's blown. What's up, Liam? Don't be dumb. Listen to Third Eagle's tune. Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to the boomer's tune. Are you there, man?
Brother Jay, how are you, sir? Good to see you. How you been?
Brother Jay, are we brothers?
Well, I mean, we're brothers in Christ. I hope.
I don't know. I'm not trying to be mean, but who are you? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm like a dude on the internet who shares your religious persuasion.
I mean, are you Orthodox?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. I also noticed, and I think you deserve some congratulations. Didn't you recently win an award for being the most influential Eastern Orthodox person on social media?
It wasn't an award. That was a Father Deacon Ananias was making a joke about a survey that one OCA group did that turned up results that some of them didn't like.
Yeah, I'm going to take it and run with it and say that that's awesome and congratulations, and that's well-deserved. I appreciate the fine work you're doing here, and it's good. There are a lot of spaces on here being run by absolute charlatans.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nice to come on and see someone who isn't a complete pretender having fun and telling the truth. So without irony, I appreciate what you're doing, and I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now it says debate, so I'm supposed to try to debate something with you, right? So I'm going to do an arm circle here. I'm going to warm up my pitching arm. All right. Here's the debate I think we should have. All right. In the title of the room, you use the word Catholic, and I don't think we should concede to the Roman Catholics that they are the Catholics and that other churches are not the Catholics. I think we should call them Roman Catholics every time.
Yeah, it doesn't fit when you have a limited number of spaces. I agree with that.
Oh, this is like a 140 character thing. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to posit a debate topic. You can ask questions or chat or whatever, but it's just I just open it up to debate any time that somebody wants to. But no, I agree that they are the Frankish Papal Church, and we are the Orthodox Roman and Catholic Church.
I think that one of the strongest points that Callistos Ware makes in his first book, which people are blown away whenever I cite, is that if you go and ask the Patriarch of Constantinople if he's Catholic, he'll say yes. And if you go and ask the Pope of Rome if he's Orthodox, he'll say yes. And this conflation of and I'm telling you what you already know, I mean, but for the benefit of the listeners, that this marketing dichotomy where we tell the general public that one of these churches is Catholic and the other one is Orthodox, I think really serves to understand neither church very well.
Yeah, I just do that because it's commonly known and spoken of that way to bring in Roman Catholics through the title. That's it. I agree with you.
I like to brag. I do like to brag. I met the man once, and he is just like the most amazing man, and everyone is... He just knocks everyone's socks off. He's one of the most...
Who are you talking about?
Callistos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just... like, when I read his book, like, in his book, he's like, when you meet Orthodox Christians, they'll, like, show you their icons. I mean, like, this is my faith. But I really do think in the 21st century, when you meet Orthodox people and you're curious about it, and you're like, hey, what's Orthodoxy about? One of the first things they show you is his books. And, like, this is the history of the church, and this is the schism, and this is how it went from, the Book of Acts. And I don't know, I have such great admiration for the man. I'd take any excuse to talk about him, really.
Yeah, I've read several of his books. I think that he has a lot of good points. I think there's some problems in his Orthodox Way book, but not everybody gets it all right.
Now, this fascinates me. This is, in all of my years, the first time I have heard an Orthodox person say a word against Metropolitan Ware. So, what is it in Orthodox Way that you don't feel he gets correctly?
There's a specifically erroneous statement about the Son being forsaken on the cross, which is a Protestant view.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Well, no, just that I enjoy your spaces, and I'm incredibly grateful for the work that you do, and I hope you'll keep going, and I wish you all good fortune.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that, and good comments. You have a good night. Let's see who's up next. The Sojourner. What's up, Sojourner? What's on your mind? It feels like late night love radio. What's on your mind? Who do you want to send this dedication out to? I'd like to dedicate Third Eagle's Doom and Gloom to my one true love, Beulah. Doom and gloom.
It will be as in
The days was flood.
rapture
comes.
Lot of Noah
Did not to share their blood.
Don't be dumb.
Rapture comes.
Trim your wick or face the
Gun.
Don't be dumb.
Rapture comes.
Fill your lamps, there won't be oil for everyone.
Everyone.
7
Years
tears
and fears
tribulation
will appear.
7 years.
Said it would be the worst. What?
Tears and
Fears. Tears for fears. What's up? What's on your mind? Doom and gloom.
Hey, Jay, thanks. I had a question about if you could point to good resources to learn about all the ecumenical councils and like what they had talked about and kind of like what came out of it. It's hard to try to find like one complete source, or you could just kind of point to something.
I mean, I would just read there's not going to be one perfect book on the 7 councils. I wish there was. You could get, Meyendorff has a book on the history of the Orthodox Church that's good. His book, Byzantine Theology, is good. There's also volume 1 and 2 of Pelican. So you don't have to read volume 3 unless you want to go into medieval stuff. But 1 and 2 of this book right here, Emergence of the Catholic Tradition, are probably the best that I could think of for what you're probably looking for.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Because 1 deals with the first 5 centuries, generally speaking, of the church. And then volume 2 deals with Eastern Christianity. And it's actually really good. So it's going to cover the spirit of Eastern Christendom, Byzantium, 600 to 1700. So that's probably the best that I could think of for what you're looking for. Handmade, somebody, what's up, Handmade? Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to the Yankees' nasal tone. Doom and gloom, Yankee doom, nasal boom.
think our lovely planet has been cursed. 7 years, tears and fears, Catholic Church will be a ghost. 7 years, tears and...
Yeah, by the way, if you're a papist, then you have to believe, as Vatican I says, that the office of the papacy and its successors and its function continues to the end of the world. There is no such thing as a apostate Rome if you believe Vatican I. But again, as we see, most of the Roman Catholics do not go and read their own documents. Now, I don't know why, but you have to go to papal encyclicals to read the entirety of Vatican I. And once again, I'll put it in the chat for you guys. Seems like this would be at the Vatican website, but I don't know. For some reason, maybe they're embarrassed of Vatican I now. It would seem that way with all the synodality, right? And what has Tim Gordon been talking about? What did he just do a stream about? Actually, it was actually a good stream. And let's see, where's Tim at? He just did a stream on the synod on synodality, which is funny because, what does that mean? Why do you need a synod on synod? It's like meta. Then we need to have a synod on synods and synods. Synod on the synodality of synods. By the way, let's see if we can... I can't figure this out. Where is it at? Oh, live streams. Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to the boomer's tone. Synod update. Synod on synodality.
Now, this isn't scientific, but I did a poll around New York.
I always get the Epoch Times ads. It's like the only ad I get is Epoch Times.
Absolutely. Already. Those bigger channels don't have the date.
I think this is it. Anyway, so Tim's basically like, why do we need a synod on synodality? And I'm like, well, because the synod on synodality is about the Alexandrian documents, statements of synodality and primacy. That's why. So, I had a point with all this. So over here on Vatican I, the reason that, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, it's like the end of the ages, right? There's a couple phrases in Vatican I about the continuance of the office of the papacy. It's unto the end. That's it. END. Let's see. So just as he sent apostles, right? This is in the section on Vatican I's section on the role of the Pope as the teacher of the faithful. And we move on to, it is his will that there would be these shepherds and teachers until the end of time. See that? So when you try to cite La Salette and all this nonsense, that's prior to Vatican I. All these dumb sedevacantists that are citing La Salette like Rome will apostatize and become the seat of the Antichrist in the end times. And it's like, no. Vatican I trumps apparitions. Maybe it doesn't, though. Maybe actually in Roman Catholicism, it's apparitions nowadays trump. But I think they do. I think actually in practice, apparitions trump Vatican I and the documents, the dogmas. But everybody knows that, papism is actually, Mary is not the Pope of the Church. The Pope is the Pope of the Church. And Vatican I is very clear that the fundamental structure of the church exists until the end of the world. The church does not lose any of its constituent elements, according to the Roman Catholic doctrine of Vatican I, until the end of the world. And that does not mean that, in the end of the world, the church loses all her elements. No, it doesn't. Until the return of Christ, bro. And it constantly says that this structure of extraordinary magisterium and the ordinary universal magisterium, it preserves this until the end. And that's partly because, and so that the entire world can recognize that, right, the papal church is the church. That's the logic of Vatican I. How could it lose its fundamental public visible witness and constituent element of unity centered around the papal office? And all the trads are like, it's all Rome is apostate. Okay, then you don't believe Vatican I. It's very simple. Shepherds and teachers until the end of time. One and undivided. It doesn't lose its public visible unity until the end of time. The shepherds are there until the end of time. And where's all of our papal lawyers at? Doesn't mean that they can't. Yes, it does. It says until the end of time. Please stop pope-splaining. The cope. The papal lawyering. It was his will that in this church there would be shepherds. Who's the supreme shepherd? The Pope. Until the end. Come on. What does it say right here in chapter 2 under this is like the footnotes or whatever. It's the summary. It says that this will stand until the end. The Roman church and Peter's successors will stand until the end. There's no such thing, by the way, as a Roman church that is not the one in Rome. This is another one. They have a million answer copes to this. Well, I believe in the Roman Church, but it's the one that exists in the Platonic forms that's not actually in Rome. Rome's apostate, but the true church exists in the ethereal realm of my mind and online. No, that's not the only Roman church is the one in the city called Rome. Anyway, but it says this until the end, like multiple times in here. So again, Catholics, please go read Vatican I before you debate. Like, these guys never go read. They never actually read Vatican I. But all the ones that do read Vatican I end up becoming Orthodox. But let's see, Ghostitious. I like that. There's superstitious and there's freaking ghostitious, dude. So, God, you're over here in the chat, bro. You want to debate? Come on the stream. Why do you think everybody comes to the chat on YouTube be like, oh, I'd love to talk to him. I'd really like to take him to task. What? That's what we're here for. There you go. Step into the arena. Thunderdome. I'm just being silly. Are you there, dude? Ghostitious? What's up? He can't connect. Well, maybe pop out and pop back in, dog. MK, what's up? Dome and globe coming soon.
Britain, Russia, and the U.S. will be toast.
Britain, Russia, and the U.S. will be toast. Nasal gloom. Yankee boom. Listen to the boomers boom. Where is everybody? They can't connect. What's going on? What the heck? Tinfoil hat. What's up? Dome and gloom. Toast. Listen to the Yankees croon.
Jay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I kind of wanted to talk about two different issues. One was iconography, which is kind of the lighter topic.
Okay.
And the other topic was kind of about liberation theology.
Okay.
I go to an Antiochian church, and majority of the parishioners are Syrian. So they kind of recognize, like, I was watching your stream with Sneck with regards to Fratelli Tutti. And I took it to our Bible study, and I had them read that, and they sniffed that out immediately. Like, they sniffed out all of the different, like, geopolitical things that were involved in all of that. Whereas I think that Roman Catholics have a problem because they're so Western, like, brainwashed from all of this, you know, like, growing up in this environment. I know I was a brainwashed Roman Catholic for quite some time. You know, just that Western philosophy where we're just like, yeah, climate change is great. And yeah, we should just go out and hang out with all of the people in the Amazon, and that's wonderful. But they really seem to understand that. And I just thought that was really interesting when I put that document in front of them, that they got that immediately.
You're saying that the Syrian people recognize that there's a geopolitical motive in Francis's Fratelli Tutti.
Like the liberation theology aspects of it.
Oh, okay.
Like, they really recognize that because they're very devout people. What people don't realize is at least the Syrian people that I know are extremely devout, and most of them are just like brand new here. I live in El Paso, so like they're brand new here, and most of them speak Arabic as their main language. And so I really that's why I wanted to show them like what would you think of this? You know, what exactly do you think of this? What would you say if Metropolitan Saba put something like that out? And they just kind of sniffed out all of the aspects of it that you and Sneck hit on, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what all we talked about, and that's been 2 years ago, maybe 2.5. So
he had some stuff in there about like climate change, and then like about shaming people for being wasteful, the oppression of man. You know, we're slaves because, you know, we're oppressors because we're Westerners and we've been oppressing the Amazon people. And you guys like nailed that down. I think it was, you guys did it in a 2-part series. I think it was back in 2020.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's been. I mean, I do remember it's just been a while. So, let's see. We did the encyclical following Pachamama right here. Here's one: A New Order, a globalized encyclical. Okay, so I'll put that in the chat for these people there. We forget about Francis's greatest hits. Like we can't forget. Fratelli Tutti and all these different ones. So what did you want to get to with icons?
Oh, the icons. Our priest, he actually teaches at the Antiochian House of Studies. So after Vespers, he tends to, like, for those of us who are in adult Bible study, he'll talk about the icons. And he was saying that he loves the Seventh Ecumenical Council. And he quizzes us on this all the time, even those of us who are active in the church. Mm-hmm. But he hit on some really good points about that. Like the icons are really, he says, that are the thing that bind the church together. He said because they bring together the tradition, the liturgy, and the gospel all into one. Mm-hmm. And he went through. We had an iconographer come to our church, and she painted the Adoration of Mary, and she came and talked to us about like the actual rituals that they go through, like the Bible passages that they read beforehand, and what a rigorous, like it's extremely rigorous. They have to fast, they go to mass. I mean, and I just thought that was really interesting that he really emphasized that, and I just think people like take the icons for granted. They're just, those are just pictures on the wall. For catechumens, you know, I think that's hard for them to understand.
Yeah, if you go back to Sneck and I actually did a really good interview on icons back in 2020-ish as well. That video is good. I did a really in-depth icon talk that was super philosophical. Maybe it was a little too philosophical for people because it didn't get a lot of views. But if people are interested in the philosophical take on icons that I was trying to convey from an Orthodox perspective, I also have a talk on that. And then Pajot and I did a great talk on icons that is basically pointing out that symbols aren't like a world of fake things or imaginary things. Symbols are reality. So they convey the reality for us. Of course, my video won't come up when I'm looking for it. Here it is. Icon and Incarnation, the Reality of Symbols is another one of the talks I did that I tried to convey that point. So if you haven't watched those, I'd recommend those. But what did you want to get to on icons? Just that it ties together all the... One of the reasons that it does that is that if you read the theology of the Seventh Council and its theologians like St. John Damascus and St. Theodore of Studite, you'll notice that what they cite is Christology and Trinitarian theology, right? All of the principles of iconography come from Trinitarian and Christological beliefs. So, as well as liturgy too and tradition. But the philosophy that undergirds it is Christology.
I know when you did that talk with David, you mentioned the Duras Europa Temple and how that connects the Old Testament with the New Testament and the Old Tradition with the New Tradition, which is why it proves that the Orthodox tradition and the way that we built our churches and decorate our churches and how we conduct our services and even the setup of the church is very similar to that. And you can prove that even using the icons.
Absolutely. In fact, this chat that we did, Sneck and I, we went deep into the Frankish history. And what you learn when you get into the Frankish stuff is that the Carolinians rejected the Seventh Ecumenical Council. And they did so because they were into Neoplatonism. And so, if you don't know, the iconoclasts were also Neoplatonists. So people don't realize this, but the rejection of iconography, its motivations philosophically were Origenism and Neoplatonism. And it's a very fascinating history to that. But aside from the theology side, when you get into the history with the Franks, they had geopolitical motivations as well, which was the reason why they rejected the Seventh Council. And this, in part, is why, ironically, the Pope of that time, at the time of the Franks, actually did accept the Seventh Council in full. But the problem is that the Seventh Council, over time, it was realized that the Seventh Council accepts Trullo. But Trullo teaches married priests. So Rome had to say, no, actually, we don't accept the Seventh Council. We give it verbal credence. But they don't accept the Synodicon, and they don't accept the canons of the Seventh Council, which would forbid half of the pagan artwork in the Roman Catholic churches.
You also mentioned something about the heterodox icons. When did that all start? I know the Jesuits pushed some of those, but when were the heterodox icons really starting to be pushed? I'm guessing
I don't actually know when the first heterodox icon would be pushed. It's a good question. I mean, if you read the Lasky Ouspensky book on the theology of the icon, which is really good, it's a 2-volume thing. Volume 2 gets into, there's a whole chapter on the heterodox icons, and exactly where they come from. Who knows? I mean, there's probably somebody that knows, but you'd have to ask some specialist on that kind of stuff. I don't know, but I'm trying to remember the names of them. They have the heterodox ones all have names, like because they're trying to teach filioque, basically, and they usually have God the Father like right next to Christ, and then they're both sending the Spirit, which God the Father is not an old man, so it's like obviously that's wrong.
You went through a few of the pretty egregious ones with David. I do remember that.
Yeah, I just don't remember the names of them. If anybody remembers in the chat the names of some of the, let's see, icon with filioque. I mean, basically they all have that. Well, this, I think this is one of them. I don't know. That one might be an Ancient of Days. So I'm not positive on that. Let me see. I don't know. I just don't remember. They have names, but I don't remember what the names are off the top of my head.
If anybody wants to know the names, I know you did go through, like you pulled out the.
Well, I mean, this is not an icon, but it's like, here's obviously a heterodox Roman Catholic version of this, where God the Father is breathing next to Christ on the cross. I mean, what? This is crazy. I mean,
the baby Jesus sitting on the old man's lap.
Well, that one I'm trying to remember. I think that one is supposed to convey filioque. I just don't remember off the top of my head which one is which. But anyway, yeah, it's all in that one talk that we did. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say you were very, very nice to that Roman Catholic girl. I wouldn't have been as patient with her.
Well, she's called in many times, and we've had the same kind of interaction. So she's always nice. So I try to be nice. Somebody else is nice. So Suzuki, what's up?
Yo, Jay. So I was wondering, can you hear me first of all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it possible for an individual to be a heretic without the church officially what's that word? Anathetize, whatever it's called. Like the church officially condemning him.
Sure.
So it's possible for example, like a saint to have heretical beliefs in let's say the 2nd century, but the church never officially condemned that saint. Would he still be a heretic, or would he not be a heretic until the church condemns him? Unless he goes against the church's teachings at the time.
Right. A heretic is somebody who goes against the teachings, right? It's not somebody who is just wrong. So, I mean, many of the church fathers got things wrong, but they're not heretics because of just being wrong. Heresy is a sin of will and obstinacy, not just a sin of knowledge or lack of knowledge.
When you say wrong, that includes religious matters. So, if a saint is wrong about
yes,
something,
many saints got theological things wrong. Sure.
Yeah, okay. And my second question would just be, again, I said this to be quick, but my second question would just be like, I've heard, and I haven't read Justin Martyr extensively. I've read the other saints a lot, but I've heard that Justin Martyr, when he's trying to explain away like the theophanies in the Old Testament, he gives an exposition where he explains them through the fact that he sees the Son as like a lesser God than the Father, who appears in the Old Testament and manifests in that way. Is that true that he holds this type of like subordinationist sort of theology or Trinitarianism?
Well, some people argue that, but I mean, you can be lesser in different ways, and so he could just mean it in the sense that when Jesus says that the Father is greater, right? That means the Father is greater in role, not in power or in essence.
Yeah. Okay. And when you say when you say the Father is greater in role, where are you deriving that from? Is it just from the church's teachings, or is that from the Bible?
I mean, do you remember Jesus saying that? The Father is greater than I?
No, I know, but I mean in the way that you're interpreting that statement.
Well, I mean, right. So
a Unitarian would interpret that, right?
Well, the problem is that the Unitarian approach picks one passage to the exclusion of the other passages, and the presupposition that we have of inspiration and holistic theology in terms of canonical interpretation means that all of the verses matter and they all have to be put together in a coherent way. And every heretic picks one verse and says, no, all the other verses have to mash up into that verse, right? So when Jesus says the Father is greater than I, that has to be balanced with the other statements in John where he says that he has all of the same powers and works as the Father, and that the Father has given everything to the Son.
Right, okay. And
so, hold on. But it's not just that. It's like tons of other texts as well. For example, the Son was always in the bosom of the Father, according to John 1.
You need to take like a holistic approach to the scripture, right? Not like...
But I'm saying that it's also the teaching of the generation of the Son, the eternal generation of the Son, as from John 1, also informs what it means to be greater. This is called the monarchia of the Father, like Dr. Branson says. Dr. Branson's going to be coming on again very soon.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of his lectures on monarchical Trinitarianism.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then just wondering, like, when you take it to like presuppositionalism, right? And especially in the Reformed tradition, but I know your Orthodox use it in that way. But like when we argue that the Christian God, well, not we, because I'm not a Christian, but like when you argue that the Christian God is the necessary precondition for all knowledge, intelligibility, laws of logic, physics, etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say like someone, like what holds back, like let's say a Muslim or a Jew using that? Is it because like their God doesn't have the attribute, their God isn't a Trinity, and that's why he can't be the necessary precondition for logic?
Correct. There's no There's no balance of the one and the many. There's no equal ultimacy of the one and the many. If you scroll back to the beginning of this live stream tonight, I went into great detail addressing that very question.
Okay, and so your position would be that if God isn't a Trinity, then he cannot be the necessary precondition for, transcendentals.
Right, because a strict Unitarian position ends up either being a modal collapse or a kind of, you could be like a pantheist, or you could be an emanationist. It's going to fall, or a deist. So I think strict Unitarian systems, if they're consistent, they'll end up in one of those positions. And those positions are incapable of grounding a worldview.
Okay, so if you could just like elaborate on that, like let's say Unitarian just takes a stance that the Son and the Spirit isn't a separate person, and the Son is just created at 0 AD or 1 AD. Why is it the case that their worldview can explain transcendentals or can account for them?
Because, as I said, one example would be that there's not an equal ultimacy to the one and the many. You would have a primacy of an abstract Unitarian. Or unity.
Yeah, I get that's like what their view is.
So how would you ground the one? How would you ground the many?
Yeah, I don't understand what you mean when you say grounding the many. Like, why can't a Unitarian interpretation of God?
Yeah, and so you're not so what are you? So you said I'm not a Christian. What are you?
I'm a Muslim.
Okay, there we go. Now it's starting to make sense. Okay,
okay. Yeah, so I want to, like, you're just restating their position. Like, okay, their position.
Okay, what do you think it means to ground something?
Well, that's dependent on the way you're using it. In what context are you saying ground? Like,
What context? Okay, what do you think I mean?
I don't know what you think. Okay. I mean, that's why I'm asking you to be elaborate. Like, for example, when you say God grounds the laws of logic, right? What I take that to mean.
Moving on. Let's see. What's up, Harry Ludwig? What's up, Harry? Are you there?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Did you cut the guy off?
I did.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, I booted him.
Anybody hear me?
I can hear you. Next up, try again in a minute. Nectarios, what's up? It's not a fair.
Hey, Jay.
So we've answered these questions a million times. I'm just not in the mood for this snickering, condescending Muslim stuff. What's up?
Hey, Jay, how are you doing?
Good. What's up?
Good. I just had a couple quick questions. I'm Orthodox. Been enjoying your content for quite a while now. I did have a question. Obviously, I don't know if you know about the controversy that's going on between Father Peter Here's Orthodox.
So that's not is that the topic for? What do you see as the topics today?
I know you're debating Protestant.
So it's nothing. So it's not. That's not on the topics. I'm not trying to be mean. I said at the beginning, if you bring on the topics, I'm not covering those topics.
Forgive me. Then can I just ask a different question? Then?
Sure.
I was kind of wondering. Some Protestants brought this up to me. They have a different. I know we have the. I used to be Protestant too, and I used to bring this up. The seal of the Holy Spirit, and you typically mean that as a salvific promise. How would we as Orthodox kind of interpret the seal of the Holy Spirit? Paul refers to it.
Chrismation.
Okay. Okay. I would have to remember the whole entire verse. I don't know. It's like somehow they just kind of twist it to like a salvific promise.
Well, I mean, chrismation is part of a salvific promise. So, I mean, if you go back to, we did a whole lecture on chrismation on Sam Shamoon's channel, me and FDA, because who was that goofus? Vocab Malone tried to say there's no such thing as chrismation. So we did an entire stream on chrismation. And that's on Sam Shamoon's channel.
Okay, and then my last question would be: there's some Protestants will bring this up as well about the Paraclesis hymn to the Theotokos of accept our offering, O Virgin Theotokos.
No.
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was pulling up a video and it was the audio started playing. I apologize. Go ahead.
It's all good. Some Protestants will, kind of criticize us Orthodox for, offering this praise to Virgin Mary by like this hymn from the Paraclesis saying, "Accept our offering, O Virgin Theotokos." How would you explain to a Protestant the difference between offering a praise to the Virgin and compared to God in a way? I know it's veneration and worship, but like, how do you kind of like explain it to a Protestant that way?
I mean, we just, if you scroll back about maybe 30, 40 minutes, had the exact same, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just saying, like, we covered that about 30 minutes ago, so. Good questions, though, yeah, I mean, we have, I think, in Scripture, the examples, what I didn't mention when we talked about it 30 or 40 minutes ago. One thing we didn't mention, so are you mad that I'm searching for my name because I'm trying to find the video? To the people that are asking, why are you searching your own name? I'm looking for because every time somebody asks a question, I'm not being rude. It doesn't bother me. It's just like, we already did a 2-hour live stream on this 3 years ago. So rather than me rehearsing the entire thing, one can go look at it there. So that was me and FDA responding to Vocab Malone, who said there's no such thing as chrismation. And so we went through all the texts in Acts and other places where we do see chrismation. And so the seal of the Holy Spirit that Paul talks about, isn't that even in the liturgy when you're chrismated? Receive this seal. Seal. Receive this seal. Seal. And I was going to say that, right, so obviously in Scripture we have a presentation where we're told to honor God, right, with worship. We all agree on that. But we see in Scripture people prostrating before Pharaoh, right? Joseph prostrates before Pharaoh. People prostrate before Elijah, right? Elisha, I think, prostrates before Elijah. Maybe it's the name in the Syrian, I forget. But there's prostrations, right? So it can't just be the external bodily action itself that is the, quote, idolatry. Because the Israelites prostrate before the ark in the temple when Solomon dedicates it, right? So there's a level of honoring veneration that's not the same thing as the worship that we give to God. And you can just go back and read the essay that Jerome wrote 1700 years ago against vigilantes. So just read Jerome's essay. Let's see. Art of Taylor. What's up, Art of Taylor? Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to...
Hello? Hey, man, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, rock and roll, Jay. Hey, you're the best. You're brilliant. I'm not. I have a couple questions for you. I used to be a goober Protestant. One thing that I had a question of, I'm completely convinced of your position that orthodoxy is true. Father, the Bible does say something to the effect that, hey, call no man father because father is, we have a father who's in heaven. Can you speak to that just a minute?
Yeah. So, we're told, for example, to honor your father and mother. Okay. How could I honor my father and mother if I can't call another person on earth father? So it's not literally in the sense of like nobody else can be called father, because Paul says in his epistles, I am your father in the faith. He tells that to Timothy. He calls himself Timothy's father. There's nothing wrong with having a spiritual father or a spiritual authority and having that title. Jesus is talking about the tendency that the Pharisees had to exclude the direct relationship that a person has with Father by basically making themselves the equivalent of God the Father. So it's a critique of the Pharisaic abuse of spiritual authority. It's not literally saying that the word, you can never call a person or someone else father. Otherwise, the Ten Commandments, you couldn't honor your father. Michael, what's up, Michael? Doom and gloom coming soon. Listen to Third Eagle's tune. What's up, Michael? Michael? Are you there? Michael's having a hard time connecting, so let's see. Let's try another person. Sometimes people, it takes a minute for it to connect. Roscoe Ducks. What's up, Roscoe? Roscoe Pico Train. Unmute, bro. Unmute, Roscoe. Go ahead. You're unmuted. All right. Roscoe's not going to talk. Kevin. Just keeping it simple. Just Kevin. Just straight up Kevin right there. None of that frill. None of that fancy frill with a last. Just Kevin. Unmute, Kevin.
Yo, Jay. I just watched your debate with Eric Yara, and I think at the end, you were talking about the different assumptions between the Catholics and the Orthodox, the different paradigms, and how those paradigms led to Catholic theology. And I was just wondering if you could expand on that and kind of explain that.
Yeah, it's similar to kind of what I was arguing in the Trent debate. So when we had the Trent debate about natural theology, it's kind of an echo of what I was trying to convey to Eric Ibarra in that debate, because one thing I noticed was that the Roman Catholic classical foundationalist, Thomistic, evidentialist approach was what Lofton and Ibarra kept kind of putting forward, which is just this idea that, well, in order to prove something like the papacy, I just stack up all these historical examples and evidences, and if I have a giant enough stack of quote mines and proofs and citations, and it hits the ceiling, then clearly the evidence is like, it's just insurmountably proving, Vatican I. If I stack it all up, if you give me 3 hours to talk in super slow motion to stack up to the roof all these pile up evidences, then see, like, maybe Vatican I's kind of close to what's true or something, right? That's a whole different approach because of their mindset. And what I was trying to convey is that I already know that Lofton and Ibarra don't know anything about tag. They don't know anything about transcendental arguments. They don't know anything about pre-sup. They don't know anything about any of that stuff. So it was difficult to convey to them, and they've still never gotten it, that it doesn't, like, certain problems are so systemic that they can cancel out the whole system. So, for example, Lofton is always arguing that y'all got problems too, dog. Yo, Orthodox, you got problems too. So why you trying to leave, dog? You got problems too. The argument was never, you have problems, we don't. That's so silly. It's a question of, what are the problems? And if the problems are so fundamental and systemic and at a paradigm level, then that cancels out the system. So if the papacy, for example, has dogmatically decreed certain things and then later contradicted that would cancel out the papal system. In other words, it wouldn't matter how many more things you pile up in an evidential case. Not saying you can never talk about evidences. It depends on the nature of the thing in question and what you're debating. And if we're debating at a paradigm level the Roman Catholic system and how it operates, and if it has in fact contradicted in a dogmatic way, which I argued in that whole 3-hour discussion that it has in many places and in many ways, and now everyone hopefully can begin to see this with your boy Francis out here saying, I mean, Francis just helps us out. Every time there's some kind of dispute with the Roman Catholics, this has been happening for like 4 years straight now. Something comes up, some big furor with the Roman Catholics comes up, and then Francis immediately, it's just so weird. This never happened. I mean, it's like it's meant to be. I'm not literally saying Francis watches it. He didn't give a crap about what we talk about. What I'm saying is, it's just a weird providential thing that we always get help. Francis helps clarify what he meant and how radically he really meant it. And what did he say the other day? Time to change. Too many trad cats in the Roman Catholic world in America who don't want to change. And that's what he just said the other day. Thank you, Francis. You come to the rescue, because when the Pope-splainers come to try to rescue you, here it is. There's a strong U.S. faction that are backwards and don't want change in the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, how many times can he say it to make it clear for all these goobers? Well, he doesn't mean what you think he means. What he really means is, hey, Jay, he don't mean changing. And then now Ibarra is even having to admit, like, this is hard to do. Yeah, that's what I was telling you like 6 years ago, Eric, when we first started arguing. But I mean, I think Eric Ibarra just lives and moves and talks and thinks in slow motion. I don't think it's his fault. I think he just literally lives in another time-space continuum where everything is moving at like 1/4 speed. Like somebody went into the settings on Eric Ibarra, like in a YouTube video, and put it on 0.25 speed. And Eric has been in that for like the last 6 years. So that's what's going on. But anyway, what I was trying to convey was just that you guys are thinking in a evidentialist, foundationalist way. I'm thinking in a presuppositional, systematic paradigm way. And so why would I sit here and stack up historical quote mines about the papacy when the whole thing can just be toppled like a house of cards by pointing out open contradictions? That was the point.
Appreciate it, Jay. Thanks.
Yeah, great question there. I like to elucidate that because it often is overlooked, especially, anytime you've seen Lofton give replies, his long-winded, unbearable videos are basically just saying, y'all got problems too. Look at the EP. Yo, look at the EP, dog. It's like, if the EP was a pope, that might be a good argument. But in the Orthodox view, you can have EPs be heretics. So what? How does that disprove the view, the system? It doesn't. So people in the chat, if you're talking smack, all you got to do is call in. And by the way, you don't have to have it's open now to PCs. So you can come on in Twitter or X through the PC. It used to be you could only come on Spaces from the app. Now you can come on any way you want. So all you got to do is hop in. There's the link. Request to speak. You can come on, make your arguments. You guys know the way we do it around here. Anybody can come on. You can make your arguments as long as you want. I didn't feel like rehearsing all of the same tag stuff and the same triad stuff with the Muslim dude that we just went through about 30 or 40 minutes of at the beginning. So, statue face dude, what's up? I can't see your name.
Oh, my name is Imperator Philippus Erebus, which I'm sure some of you are aware that that's a Syrian Roman emperor from the 3rd century.
Okay, what's up, man?
I just was piqued. My interest was piqued by the title of this space. I don't really know what it's all about, and I wondered if you could just give a quick summary of what you're doing.
Yeah, so I just usually open this up to theistic debates on the topics of things like church history, Christianity. I defend Orthodox Christianity, so we usually open it up to atheists or Roman Catholics or Protestants, evangelicals, whoever wants to come on, agnostic. And typically we end up arguing for topics that relate to, philosophy, theology, apologetics, that kind of stuff.
My personal spiritual philosophy is probably closest to something like Neoplatonism, and I appreciate the old pagan custom, the old Roman pagan customs of like ancestor reverence. And my personal viewpoint would be, I don't really, what do you think the relevance of Christian doctrine is to the problems of the modern world? Because I'm kind of a lapsed Catholic, and I tried going back to church recently, and I just did not find any kind of comfort in what the priest was saying. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, man, I don't blame you for not being that interested in the Roman Catholic world, but I believe the Orthodox Church is the true church, so I think it has the answers to all of man's hopes, desires, and dilemmas. So I think it offers ethics. I think it offers meaning. It offers communion and union with God. I mean, I think it offers all those things that certainly the modern world not only lacks, but I mean the modern world is really kind of in my view, a desolate, empty place in terms of what it offers as answers to man's ills. So psychology and humanism and transhumanism and all of these things I think are basically empty and in no way can give man meaning or hope or ethics or anything.
That's an interesting question. So you think ethics is something dictated, not something that can be sort of instinctually reasoned from one's own logic?
I mean, I think that all the different ethical schools or theories might have some truth to them. I mean, I think that you could have, I wouldn't boil ethics down to just strict dictates. I think there's consequential elements to ethics. I think there's normativity in ethics. I think there's objectivity in ethics. So I think there's a lot of different relevances for different positions in ethics is what I'm trying to say. So I think the Ten Commandments are a great tool for, I mean, I don't think they're only pragmatic, but I think they are pragmatic. But I wouldn't be just a pragmatist in ethics because I think that the Ten Commandments works. I also think that it's true.
Because you often hear people say that without some sort of explicit spiritual doctrine that people would have no ethics, which I always find to be such an interesting statement, because to me, I think that ethics are pretty rational. Like, you can have a rational basis for ethics, and you should have, like, you shouldn't just be what you're told to do. It should be, you should have good reason for why you want to do it.
Well, I would say that maybe a better way to frame that argument would be that not that you can't have any ethics, but there's not a way to justify the ethics, right? So I would say that philosophy, the way I would argue that would be that if you don't believe in some kind of personal God, then there's not a way to have any epistemic grounding or justification for your ethical norms.
Yeah, I disagree with that, because I think that the grounding would be one's own experience and knowledge of what causes pain. I guess that's kind of a utilitarian viewpoint, but we all experience pain. We all experience suffering. We can know what causes suffering.
Well, but
directly.
Okay, but why simply because we know what causes pain ought we to choose to not inflict pain? I mean, and by the way, how do we know that that's the universal experience?
Well, I guess, how do you know that there's anything? I mean,
well, I mean, I would give philosophical argumentation as to how I would know those things, but I'm saying if you're going
to a very like Cartesian kind of argument about,
No, I don't think Descartes has good arguments. I'm saying if in your position, based on what you just said right there, I would just simply ask you, well, how do you know that that's universal experience? First of all, that we all know pain and suffering. I mean, maybe we do, maybe we don't. How do you know that? And then I'm asking a separate question, which is that why ought we to choose simply because we know the source of pain and suffering that we shouldn't inflict pain or that we shouldn't choose pain?
Well, obviously there's times where inflicting pain and suffering are merited when it's in self-defense, but I think...
Okay, but so now we have a qualification, and but why? Like, why is self-defense the qualification there?
Because you have a right to limit your own suffering.
So where do rights come from?
I mean, I think most people would. I think most people would.
Well, that's a fallacy of consensus or appeal to the masses. What does most people have to do? So what?
Well, any religion is also a consensus. You have to believe that most people have faith.
I don't believe that.
What would you say a religion is then? How do you get people? Because you have to. What would be?
Religions have people who have consensi, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether it's true or false. I mean, you could have a.
But it has everything to do with, because most religions aren't just about divine punishment. They also give dictates for temporal punishment, based on the ethical guidelines they set out. So it's not just that God's going to punish you; it's that it gives people the right to punish other people.
Okay, but that's a better, more consistent, coherent grounding and justification for ethics than what I heard you give, which was pain, pleasure, and consensus.
Well, I think you think that just arbitrary doctrine is a better argument for consensus than people recognizing that most people probably experience pain in a similar way. And that
well, hold on. Why is it arbitrary? I wouldn't say it's arbitrary.
Why is it not arbitrary? Who wrote it down? Who verified it?
Well, the argument would be that the worldview as a whole is coherent and consistent and can give a justification for things like ethical norms. And what I'm saying is,
how is it coherent and consistent? Who decided that?
It's not a authority decision. It's an objective principle, or it's an objective argument about the worldview as a whole. So I'm saying that the Christian worldview gives an account for those things, and there's a basis in that worldview for why there is universality to ethics, or why there's universals at all. And I'm saying
assuming that you take the doctrine of Christianity as a fact. But what about people who don't take the doctrine of Christianity as a fact?
But that has nothing to do with the argument being true or false. So you keep appealing to things that are kind of irrelevant to the argumentation. So I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying that.
What do you mean?
That's a fallacy of irrelevance. However many people agree or disagree has nothing to do with the truth or falsity of the argument. I mean, if I polled a bunch of people who said that they don't think you exist, does that have anything to do with the truth or falsity of whether you exist? Of course not.
No, but if you're trying to create a universal ethical standard that you want to hold other people to, not just yourself, then the truth of it.
Well, the consensus of the people, again, has nothing to do. That's a fallacy of consensus. It has nothing to do with whether it's true or false.
I guess what would be the reason that you would believe a doctrine handed down to you has greater truth and just greater truth than using your own logic to reach a conclusion about what is good?
Because my logic itself has to appeal to some kind of universal logic for it to be coherent and consistent. And that requires some kind of omniscient divine mind, and I don't have that, but God does. So that makes sense.
But how are you certain that the doctrine that was handed down to you comes from God?
Well, there's different ways I could go about checking to see if that's the case. If you're asking for like evidences, one evidence would be that the Old Testament, for example, has probably 100 or 200 messianic prophecies that are specific about the time, date, and life of the Messiah. So that's one evidence that's super strong, predicting, when he would come, what he would do, he would die, etc. So isn't
that kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy? If I say someone's going to come and then someone says they're the person at the right time, when you already said there was supposed to be a person who was going to come.
It's not it's like hundreds of prophecies that note where he would be born, under what empire, what would happen in his life, the destruction of the temple, that he would die, be put to death, that he would be a son of David. I mean, it's hyper specificity. It's not just it's not like Nostradamus, like there'll be a dude and he'll do this. No, it's hyper specific.
But how do you even know that the Old Testament is consistent across time for the prophecies you're laying out?
Well, the irony is that even if I believe that it is, and that's a doctrine of faith, sure. But the irony is that even liberal scholars will admit that the book of Daniel, for example, it's at least 2 centuries prior to the coming of the Messiah, and it predicts the empire under which the Messiah would die. And in Daniel 7, it says that the temple will be destroyed. It says that he would be killed. So there you go.
I mean, are you certain that Daniel has been consistent across time? But also, what level of specificity? Does it say specifically the Roman Empire in Daniel?
Daniel lists the empire after the empire that he lived under, which was the Greeks. So yes.
Well, that could be any empire, and the Greeks weren't really even an empire.
Yes, they were. They were an empire under Alexander the Great, and then have you read the Maccabees?
Well, that's not really the Greeks per se. That's the Hellenistic empires. You know, it would have been like.
So Alexander doesn't. Okay, so if you read the book of Maccabees, it's considered in that text to be the Greek Empire. So even if it's not the equivalent,
empire.
they're called the Greeks in the text. So whether you take issue with the terminology, that's fine. I'm just saying that the terminology of Daniel 9 is very specific about when he would come, what would happen, and under the empire following the empire of Daniel's day. And I'm just saying it doesn't matter how liberal you find the scholarship, they all agree that Daniel was written prior to the coming of Jesus, and that's at least 2 centuries prior to that. So I mean, you have a lot of like responses, but I don't detect that you even know anything about this topic, which is fine. I'm not expecting you to necessarily, but I mean, I would think that if you wanted to rebut something like messianic prophecies, you would know that. I mean, it's not just some guy said there'd be a dude coming in the future, right? You would at least know something about the historicity of the book of Isaiah, for example, or like Isaiah's widely attested to in the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example. So, are you familiar with the book of Isaiah?
The point isn't to debate. Well, my point, anyways.
Well, you asked me for evidences of why I would trust those books, and I'm giving you various texts, and I'm not detecting that.
The point isn't that you have explanation. The point isn't that you have doctrinal explanations. The point is that you are appealing to your own reason.
Sure. Well, you asked me, but you asked me what you asked. It's not my own reasoning. My reasoning is a faculty. There are a
lot of people who
you can't distinguish between the principles themselves and the faculty of reasoning. So I have a faculty of reasoning, but you asked me for why I believe those things, and I'm giving you the answers. So you might not like those things.
Why are your reasons for why you believe those things any different than my own empirical, logical reasons?
Because I don't think you can give an account for knowledge at all if you're an empiricist.
How can you give an account for knowledge?
How are you an empiricist if you're a Neoplatonist?
I don't understand that question, to be entirely frank.
All right. Let's move on. Let's see. Vanessa. What's up, Vanessa? Go ahead, Vanessa. Oh, wait. Maybe I didn't hit the button right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I just jumped on a while back ago, and I was looking at the title. I appreciate your time on the space and giving some theological knowledge. I had a question about, I know you have the different religions and the topic. I've had this thing. It's not a thing, but I see a lot of visions, and it's too much for me sometimes. And I was wondering, out of all those religions, which maybe text I could probably read to better lead me. I am Protestant, but I see things before they die, weather phenomena and stuff.
No, sorry. So that's called delusion. So you need to read the Orthodox Study Bible and stop following the visions and delusions. American Man, what's up? American Man, stay away from me. I kind of like this sunglass or glasses only. I feel like synthwave or something. I feel like I'm like Night Call over here. Stravinsky's Night Call. I'm giving you a night call to refute your dumb arguments. I wear my nerd glasses at night so I can refute the dumb arguments from the people. I wear my lesbian internet glasses at night so I can't see anything because the new internet is not working right. So no, the light went out because I don't have my normal lighting. We couldn't fit it in moving it down here, so I got to buy new lights. What's up, man? Where you at? I'm mute, dude. Man, we got some rough arguments tonight, boy. It's a challenge. Maybe I should have let that Muslim dude talk, because that probably would have been a better conversation. That Muslim dude, if you're in here, you want to come back and you want to rehearse the whole Trinity thing, we can. Because it's getting wild in here now.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem with Muslims, and I'm actually, I wouldn't say I'm Catholic or Protestant, but maybe I'm fitted into that sort of line of Christianity. I grew up going to Methodist church. I was confirmed. I was baptized in the Methodist church. So I don't know if that's in that line again of specifically for what is supposed to be clarified or for what is supposed to be titled as a Protestant, sort of Christian. But my problem
Methodist would count as Protestant. Yes, it would.
My problem is with Muslims, and a lot of their books or parts of the Quran can have been debunked. I've actually can prove this out of YouTube. I posted it about a day or two ago.
So we've had a whole bunch of Muslim debates. So I'm not trying to be rude, but what's your topic? What do you want to get to?
Well, I think what I would like to see is that the Catholics and a lot of the Christians, even myself and my own sort of denomination or sect of Christianity, I think we need to look into a bit more of why there are pages and texts missing out of the Bible that would have been in the Bible.
All right. This is getting crazy. Where's the... now I want the Muslim dude back. Are you in here, Muslim dude? Please come back. This is getting ridiculous. Did Roscoe want to try again? I wear my sunglasses at...
Hello?
Yes, sir. What's up?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Jay. I found some of your work very helpful, and I'm actually reading your book on meta-narratives right now. And your work has been very helpful.
Thank you.
For me in entering the catechumene.
That's good.
But even when I was Protestant, I was looking into messianic prophecies, and I wanted to get your take on one in particular, and maybe if you wanted to suggest me some additional literature to read as well on this topic.
Okay. Which one?
The Daniel 70 Weeks Prophecy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe that it predicts the exact year on which Jesus died. I want to know what your interpretation of that would be. And I know it's a very convoluted text to interpret, so yeah.
Well, I think if you read in the Orthodox Study Bible, they actually have a really good note going back to like Ezra and Nehemiah about possible rulers, which and the building of the wall, which could have been in the beginning of that period. So I'm flexible and open to different possibilities there. I don't have like some dogmatic position, but do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have Orthodox Study Bible?
Yeah, I've read that particular section, and I'm aware of some of the starting dates for what people place the 490 years on. The one in First Ezra chapter 7, verse 14, if I'm not mistaken. That one.
So do you take issue with that or something, or what?
Well, the question that I wanted to pose to you is the traditional interpretation from what I've read in specifically Saint Athanasius, some of the other fathers, is that it predicts the year that he starts his ministry. So like in 27 AD. But I believe it's particularly about his death. Would that be issue-o-matic for you?
No, I don't have any hard position on this.
Okay. And do you think that this is anything useful for apologetics?
I mean, are you wanting me to check out something like a specific person that you think is really good on this or something? Or like, I'm just not familiar with the specific argument that you're saying.
I'm just asking if you think, because I mean, if it does predict the exact year that Jesus died,
yeah,
I mean that's pretty good evidence. You'd
sure
admit,
right?
So would you pose this as an evidence for Jesus as the Messiah?
I mean, yeah, I think that even if I don't know the exact date per se, I've always thought this is one of the strongest passages. Even the Jews do.
Right.
So okay. What is it you want me to check out?
I didn't want you to check out anything in particular. I'm just wondering if there's any sort of like flexibility, or if you had a particular like.
Well, you sound like you have an argument as to like who we need to look to has this position, or is it something that you studied out, which is fine. I think it's possible that you could have studied and come to that.
Yeah, no, I have studied this a little bit, and I've come to my own conclusion. I'm just asking if you have a particular interpretation of it.
No, I do not have any hard. I do not have
not sure. Yeah.
Right. No, I don't have any hard answers on this.
And my second question would be: is there any literature that you would suggest on the subject of messianic prophecies?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't actually know what a good book on that is. You would think there would be. There probably is, but I mean, Sam Shamoon and I have done just a bunch of podcasts on it, but I don't actually know of one book that covers that. One reason for that too is that your theology, like your ecclesiology and all that, that's also going to affect what you consider messianic prophecy. So, for example, no evangelicals or dispensationalists, for example, will ever grasp or understand all of the Old Testament predictions of the Gentile church as fulfilled in the first coming of the Messiah, and therefore they lose all of those proof texts as well, you see, because they don't believe that the Messiah set up the kingdom and that the Gentiles coming into the church is a fulfillment of all of those passages in the Psalms and in Isaiah and Ezekiel. So, kind of how we, what our presuppositions are about theology also, unfortunately, will kind of impact, because like if you look up messianic prophecies fulfilled in Christ, usually you're going to get like Protestant evangelical takes that only focus on, like the specifics of Jesus being killed in Isaiah 53 and, which is fine, but there's actually like hundreds more. So you see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, Protestants tend to go to like the specific Psalm 22,
exactly,
Isaiah
right.
53, those kinds of like very glaringly obvious passages, but tend to overlook the typology that's offered in the Old Testament because they don't really have a framework through which they can interpret that.
Exactly, and all of the theophanies as well, because many of those theophanies also have a typological import as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, good questions. I wish I had a better answer on exactly Daniel 9.
Do you have like any maybe literature on proving Christianity from the outset of maybe Judaism?
Well, I mean, I'm going to do a talk on the Jewish texts that I've been reading that I read for the Daniel debate. So, I mean, I would say it's they're not interested in proving Christianity, but the irony is that it points in that direction. So I would just say look at Peter Schaeffer's little book on. He just focuses on Daniel and the Son of Man texts. I forget the name of that book, but I think if you watch my Daniel Pikachu debate in the first 15 minutes, I cite a bunch of these. So get the Schaeffer book, get the Summer book on bodies of God in ancient Israel. That one's really good. And even though they're not specifically about messianic prophecies, they're basically admitting that the Old Testament is full of theophanies, it's basically essence inner distinction. There's multiplicity in God in the Old Testament. Those two books are really good.
All right. Thank you for the answer. Have a nice day. God bless.
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, I don't know that. You should have said who you think the ruler is that would give it like an exact date. Let's see. Christian Logos. What's up, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just got done taking your history of philosophy course, which was freaking awesome.
Oh, you liked it?
Yeah, dude, it was really good. And
Thanks,
I was
man.
taking that alongside the Wheaton College course too, because they have theirs up on YouTube for free too. And I liked yours a lot better.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, theirs goes into a lot more. They have like 90 lecture series,
Oh,
but
wow.
yours is really cool because it was very condensed. So
Yeah.
it just kind of helped kind of put everything
Right.
together. And I just wanted to clear up some questions I had on that because I got it past the Q&A portion, so I wasn't able to like ask you directly during that.
Right. Sure.
So do you see it as really an argument continuing from Plato's kind of innate ideas, his deductive reasoning in through Aristotle's, and then just this kind of like bouncing back and forth between those two logical positions up through history?
Are you talking about because I was kind of classifying the history of Western philosophy as dialectics? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in like some sense, and I've heard a lot of people say before, like the history of philosophy is basically just the arguments continued between Plato and Aristotle, aside
Right.
of either two. You know, do you kind of see it in between that? And if so, what specifically in Christianity really links these two together?
Well, the rejection of dialectics. So Christianity doesn't favor. Let's talk about some of the commonalities between Plato and Aristotle in terms of Hellenic dialectics. We would have the idea that there's a primacy given to unity over multiplicity. There's a ontological primacy given to eternality over time. There's a primacy given to stasis as opposed to movement and change. And that would be common to both Aristotle and Plato. And so the ontologically diminished status of the world is actually cashed out as opposites, right? At least in...
Okay.
But God is not the opposite of the world. Creation is not the opposite of eternity. Time is not the opposite of eternity. Change is not the opposite of stasis. And so Orthodoxy says, because of the doctrine of creation, the world is good. It's not a thing to flee from. Christ affirmed the goodness of the world when he took on matter in the incarnation, and also when he created it, by the way. Why would God create if it's evil? But, the fact that in the Hellenic presentation, there's no doctrine of creation, so there's no creator-creature distinction. There's no distinction between the created and the uncreated. So there's already the inability, due to Hellenic philosophy and metaphysics, to overcome the dialectical oppositions between one and many and created, uncreated, etc. So what I was trying to argue is that Christian philosophy and metaphysics that results from the doctrine of the Trinity and creation and the whole narrative of Christianity and so forth, the goodness of history, for example, right? Christ becoming incarnate is an affirmation of the goodness of history. History's not bad. It's not evil. It's not something to flee from, right?
Right, and I think it's really important here too, the Russ Mannion paper, where he shows that there has to be like this relevant or revelation factor to man
Sure.
as well, or else he's kind of just trapped in between the mind and material world. But that does make a lot of sense too, because in Plato and Aristotle, they don't have this revelation, so they're kind of just extrapolating from their own minds.
Correct.
Whether it's deductive or inductive. And then human history, honestly, just probably out of pride and arrogance, just doesn't want to accept that revelation to man of really looking up to a God first before starting these philosophic projects.
Yeah, I think in both Aristotle and Plato, for all of their good points and their insights, the Synodicon of Orthodoxy eventually condemns Aristotelianism and Platonism because they're autonomous human rational system building projects, and those are doomed to fail because they don't take into account not just divine revelation but also the fall. And the doctrine of the fall is necessary as part of how we understand man's inability and incapacity for the fullness of understanding. Man's not going to be able to properly interpret the natural world, for example, without understanding that this world's actually a fallen world. And it's not fallen because of some metaphysical principle. It's fallen due to ethics. When Adam sinned, it was a moral problem. The moral problem then resulted in metaphysical change, chaos, disintegration, all that. But man's problem is not metaphysics or a metaphysical issue. Man's problem is moral, and that's why people don't like Christianity. For the most part, the world, what does Jesus say in John 3, right? The darkness does not come to the light because its deeds would be exposed. And so people don't want to change. And when they realize that Christianity is actually about that, it's not sitting around and, meditating about ultimate unity and metaphysical, speculation. That's not what it's ultimately about.
Yeah, and without that doctrine of the fall too, I see there being an issue logically if you're taking on a project like Plato or Aristotle with trying to figure out in God evil and kind of being forced into a dualistic, which eventually is just a monistic position as well. Because don't those kind of bounce back and forth if you don't have this doctrine of the fall and stuff too
Sure.
to really set that distinction away from God? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Other than
Great
that,
points.
yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate you taking the course. Really, thank you for those kind words. And for those that are interested, that course is always available. I put the link in the chat there. You can get over at Richard Grove's Autonomy Agora Marketplace right there, University of Reason, and it ends up being, I think, over 30 hours if you count all the Q&A. 12 different lectures, history of Western philosophy there. I don't know, Father Deacon, I don't know if you wanted to speak. You popped off. Maybe you're not where you can speak. If you do want to speak, you can. You're welcome to hop on here. Let's see. Lowen Howard, what's up, dude? Yeah, I didn't say the fall was only morals. I said that morals are the essence of the fall. Adam morally transgressed. Then that resulted in all the metaphysical problems. Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Hello? Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Hey, Jay, I'm a Orthodox Christian, and your work has been tremendously influential on me and helped kind of bring me into the church. I had a question about cessationism and continuationism.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the Orthodox Church fall on that issue?
Well, if you by cessation, can you mute? It's echoing, dude. If by cessation you mean ceasing of all miracles, of course we do believe in miracles. If you mean by the ceasing of like new divine revelations that are like part of Scripture or something like that, no, I believe that divine revelation was complete when John the Apostle died, and thus, as Scripture says, the deposit of faith was once for all delivered to the saints. So if it's once for all delivered as a deposit, you can't have new deposits. And so ecumenical councils are not new divine revelations. They're just the church explicating and with more precision explaining what was already there. So contrary to the Roman Catholic idea of like doctrinal development and evolution, we don't believe that. We think that the faith was once for all delivered. Everything that was necessary in the 1st and 2nd century is still here, still the same. There's no new dogmas, even icons and even Mary, all of that's very early. Maybe not every dispute and every explication was early, but the essence of that faith is unchanged and no different.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful.
Did you mean by cessation ceasing of all miracles or ceasing of new divine public revelation?
Ceasing of new divine revelation.
Yeah.
I have a lot of Protestant friends, and they'll oftentimes question me as to how I'm able to know that the canon is complete. If it's the ecumenical councils that that ratify or that affirm the canon, what's stopping us from having another ecumenical council? This sort of thing.
Well, every ecumenical council begins the council, if you notice, especially like Trullo and the 7th Council, with saying that we intend to follow everything in the previous council. So that's pretty much the norm. So you couldn't have a new ecumenical council that says, oh yeah, the previous council they gave us the canon of Scripture is wrong. And so for the Orthodox Church, the canon of Scripture that you find in the synods of Carthage which are pretty prevalent in the West. The Latins have their own synods under Pope Damasus, Augustine, etc., where they affirm the same Carthaginian canon, basically. It's Trullo that affirms the Carthage canon, and then Trullo is reaffirmed in 6 and 7 for us. So 6 and 7 reaffirm Trullo, which affirms Carthage, which has the Deuterocanon.
Okay, and that would be 79 books, right?
That sounds right.
Okay, I mean, I feel like there's some controversy, like there's a third Maccabees that some jurisdictions.
Well, that's in the
recognize.
Can you mute? It's echoing. Yeah, I mean, it's in the Orthodox Study Bible, for example. Third Maccabees is there, and for us having the canon, like we don't have to have like a sola scriptura Protestant mindset about it. So it's okay if like a Slavonic canon stuck the Book of Enoch in there, or a collection stuck the Book of Enoch in there, because for us it's okay that there's flexibility for that. Like you can have because we're not sola scriptura. You can have tradition outside the scriptures, so it's not that big of a deal if you look at John Damascus's list, for example. Even as late as John Damascus, he thinks the apostolic canons and the letters of Clement are part of Scripture. So there's flexibility even up into that period in terms of what actually, quote, is the canon. And so when we say the canon of Scripture a la ecumenical council, that's just what's normative for us. Doesn't mean that there's not elements of flexibility with Third Maccabees or even the Book of Enoch and some Slavonic Bibles.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for your time, Jay.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, I mean, we're not a Bible-only church, so it's not a problem for us that there's a little bit of flexibility on some of that. And I mean, to me, it doesn't bother me the Book of Enoch is in there, because I mean, Jude cites the Book of Enoch, so it's just another attestation to literature, pointing to the Messiah. Doesn't mean that the Book of Enoch has to have the exact same level of authority as the Gospels or something like that, because even in the Orthodox Church, we honor the Gospels above even Paul's epistles. That doesn't mean that Paul's epistles are, oh, you think they're false. No, it's not an either or. It's a both and. But there's still levels to even within Scripture, and even Paul's epistles have levels within them. For example, Paul says in one of his letters, "This I say, not of the Holy Spirit, but I give my own opinion." And so Paul distinguishes there even what's in his letter from the Holy Spirit. So that does not mean that we're saying that, oh, this Bible's full of errors. No, I'm not saying that. Bed safe again, and then I'm getting kind of tired, so I'm gonna have to call it a night after this. Go ahead.
Hey, Jay. Have you investigated the Dead Sea Scrolls possibly being a forgery?
I am familiar with one or two of the supposed scrolls or texts being actual forgeries, and so I certainly hold that it's possible that the Dead Sea Scrolls were a forgery. They could have been forged for various geopolitical reasons. Some people theorize that.
Yep.
I don't know for sure, but if they are authentic, then they do attest to the book of Isaiah. If they're not, my faith doesn't rest on the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, I've heard you say that. The one thing I was wondering is, what would the Dead Sea Scrolls implicate in terms of like the one world government type thing? Like, are they adjusting something that's in Old Testament where, the Abrahamic faiths would be able to agree on something where like the Dead Sea Scrolls refactor, the Old Testament in such a way that it changes all the theological...
Well, I mean, we already have, ancient preserved authoritative normative text in the Orthodox Church. So it's not gonna do anything to us unless a bunch of clerics are compromised and cave into some.
Yeah, like if Nicaea 2 or whatever.
Yeah, it's some deception. Yeah, I mean there could be conceivably some deception where Elaine Pagels and Bart Ehrman and Bartholomew get together and say, oh, we've decided that these newly discovered texts, let's say that there's the Dead Sea Scrolls Part 2, And these newly discovered texts actually correct all of our misunderstandings about, we already, I mean, that wouldn't fly, for most Orthodox people. Certainly.
Gotcha, but there's not something already pre-existing in the Dead Sea Scrolls right now that's doing something like that it's such,
I don't know. That's actually, I mean, I'm not a textual scholar, so I don't know enough about, I mean, I've read a little bit on the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I don't know enough about, like, I mean, aren't there texts that are supposedly what they think were, who's the zealot group that some people say John the Baptist supposedly, I don't believe this, but what's that zealot group that they think John the Baptist was part of? Like the Jewish version of monks. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I'm going blank just because.
But I have no clue about the name, but I know about the theory.
The Essenes. I'm trying to think of the Essenes, right? So aren't there some texts in Dead Sea Scrolls, if I recall, that relate to supposedly the Essenes? I mean, I'm just going from memory. So, and I think that people try to make an argument that, and ironically, this is actually an old Masonic argument. If you read Manly P. Hall's Secret Teaching, he was trying to argue a long time ago that, Jesus was actually secretly an Essene, and he was initiated into the mysteries through the Essenes, and he was actually some sort of Gnostic magician.
What the shit?
That's it.
Yeah, so John the Baptist is actually the Gnostic.
That's it.
Religion
prophet. And that's why the Masons have a really high reverence for John the Baptist, is that they think he was an Essene who initiated Jesus or whatever. But I think I'm right about that. I might be getting
I'm just thinking,
documents
maybe
mixed
you
up.
should, I don't know, look into it. If there's something there, it could be, a nice video to look into. Anyway, that was my question. Thanks.
Let's see if the Dead Sea Scrolls did. Yes, the Essenes and the Dead Sea Scrolls. So supposedly, some of the Dead Sea Scrolls had these texts that were supposedly attesting to the Essenes. And let's see, they gained fame in modern times as a result of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So yeah, I'm right about that. But I'm not a textual scholar, so I can't speak with much authority on these topics. But we can all cite the experts, can't we? Cite the experts. We'll go to one more because I'm getting really tired. We'll read the super chats. Ryan, what's up, dude?
When I add in this powder, it instantly...
Ryan, are you there? Unmute, man. You gotta unmute, dude. All right, well...
here?
Yep.
Oh, I'm here, right here.
Yo, what's up?
I mean, we're talking about this biblical stuff and all this and all that. I mean, I love it. But dealing with today, like what's going on right now, do you not feel like some things are coming to an end?
What do you mean?
Like, what I mean is, I feel like we have kind of like a false prophet in office. We have
who? Francis? What are you talking about?
No, Joe Biden, obviously.
All right. Well, I'm not trying to be mean, but we're
not a false prophet.
All right. So tonight's topics are not about Joe Biden. Ben, last call. What's up, dude? You gotta unmute, man.
Hello?
Yeah, what's up, dude?
Hey, I was hoping to ask an exegetical question.
Okay.
The Calvinists really use John 6 and John 10 as their main go-tos, I think, when they're talking about unconditional election and perseverance of the saints, some of those things. And generally, I think I'm pretty solid on some of the responses to the Calvinist understanding of Romans and stuff like this, because that's very mainstream and apologetics. But as far as the Johannine literature goes, is there books you'd recommend? And then if you could maybe spend like 5 minutes or so on those two passages, that'd be helpful.
You want to spend 5 minutes on what, John 6 and John 10 in regard to what? The drawing? I will draw. What about which I'll draw all men to myself? I mean, you mean all of those passages? So let me say, first of all, that we lectured through the entire Gospel of John. So you can go watch my lectures that go through the entire Gospel. But the thing with this is that we don't just get our Christology or our soteriology from abstracting it from those texts. So I'm not trying to diverge from or not go into the apologetics or the exegesis of John 6 and John 10. I'm just saying that we already did like a lecture through the entirety of John. So I would say watch those if you want the full exegesis. But I mean, there's so many passages, for example, that intertwine within those chapters with the universality of Christ's message, that to then only restrict it to, but he's only going to draw the ones that he secretly actually likes, right? So it's true that the apostles were chosen before the foundation of the world, yeah, and even Judas was chosen, and Jesus says it'd been better if he'd never been born. But none of those passages negate synergism, and that's the problem with Calvinism, is that Calvinism is premised on God being, there's different problems. One problem is God is the immediate direct cause of all events via the divine decree. And we don't believe that as Orthodox. We think that God permits evil, but he's not the direct immediate cause of evil. So there is secondary causes that really have causal power. Now, I know that Calvin gave verbal credence to secondary causes, but the problem is that secondary causes means that those beings have their own energy and will. And so if you have your own energy, that means that it's impossible that you can ever not have synergy. Because having human will and human energy is fundamental to having human nature. And this is what comes out of the ecumenical councils when it comes to Christology. And so to have a soteriology that dispenses with anthropology and Christology, to say then that God's will and energy replaces my human will and energy, is number one, to not have secondary causes in fact, even though Calvin has them in theory. And also it is to violate the principle of human nature, which is that nature has its own will and power and energy. And so if you remove those things, then it's no longer synergy, it's monergism, and that's why Calvinists are monergists. But if you read the Disputation with Pyrrhus, and by the way, it's actually multiple passages where in the Gospels that Maximus ends up debating with Pyrrhus. So if you read the Disputation of Pyrrhus, I'll say that'd be a good place for you to start, because he will actually exegete a bunch of passages that demonstrate that Christ is submitting his human will and energy to the divine will and energy to please the Father. Particularly the, let this cup pass from me text. The debate becomes focused on that. And the reason that is relevant to the Calvinist position is that Calvinism ends up squishing human persons into nature, such that human persons no longer have the natural faculty of willing and energy to synergize in the process of conversion. Now, how do I know it's synergism? Yes, Calvinism reduces to occasionalism. That's what I'm arguing, Theodore. Well, it's not synergism anymore because, for example, every time Paul in the New Testament is talking about baptism, the Calvinist has to divorce it from the rite of baptism. But why doesn't Paul divorce it throughout the passages consistently, especially Titus 3, where he calls the baptism the washing of the laver of regeneration? Now, Paul says there's one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. But every Calvinist says, no, there's not. There's two. There's regeneration, which is the spiritual baptism. And then there's water baptism, which is this separate thing. But all throughout the New Testament, those things are always joined. So this principle of synergism is always there, especially in sacramentology. And that point about baptismal regeneration itself refutes the Calvinist notions from John 6 and John 10 that irresistible grace is what's absolutely necessary to achieve regeneration, and that there's no willing on your part. You don't synergize in regeneration. That's just simply false. Jesus even calls faith a work. This is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he has sent. And we have no problem saying that, yeah, faith is a gift, but it's still not the case that you never have the synergy of your will. But Calvinist regeneration theology is built on the idea that you're, quote, spiritually dead, and so you do not have the ability to will the good. And so they also don't have any distinction between natural goods and supernatural goods. That's part of Christology. That's also part of what Palamos teaches, right? That there's a distinction between nature and supernature. That's how we have theosis. So all of these points are lost in Calvinism because Calvinism doesn't have correct anthropology. Calvinism actually has Pelagian anthropology. And you say, wait a minute, that's impossible. How could you? What? That's crazy. Calvin has Pelagius's doctrine of prelapsarian man, because both Pelagius and Calvin thought and taught that Adam could have merited his salvation. Ergo, it's a Pelagian doctrine of prelapsarian man. Now we're after the fall, we're in this hopeless position to where there's no ability to will or to energize at all. And yet we're told in Romans that God either accuses or excuses the pagans when they do what's right. Well, if you believe in total depravity, how is God excusing pagans who do right? That doesn't exist. Furthermore, why does the Bible talk so much about righteous people like Elizabeth and her husband being perfect and righteous before the Lord? And it talks about the works that they did. How is David able to say, Lord, you know my heart. I have not sinned before you. I have done what is right. You see, there's all these psalms, you start noticing all these examples that if I was a Calvinist, how could I say that? How is that possible? How can David write that as a Calvinist? You see how none of these things make sense? Well, it does make sense, though, if the Calvinist paradigm is just simply not correct.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I'll read that disputation with Pyrrhus, and then do you happen to remember the titles for those lectures you guys did?
If you just type in J. Dyer, Gospel of John, you'll start noticing. I wish I could make it into a whole playlist, but maybe I can. But I think there's a limit on how many playlists you can put on your homepage. Let's see. If you just type in J. Dyer, Gospel of John, let's see how many we get when we do that. It looks like they all come right up. So there's at least 5 or 6 or 7 that come up.
Okay. And then I heard some people in the stream talking about Daniel. And I know generally the Christian interpretation, with the 490 years, this terminates in the coming of Christ. And I've spent some time reading some stuff on Daniel, though, and the liberals, obviously they date it to the mid-2nd century BC, and the reasoning for that is really it's presuppositional. It's like they presuppose that there can't be real prophecy, and so then they go find the prophecies, and then they put it the year before that. Basically. Yeah,
but it still predicts him being born in the next empire, which is ironic. I'm just saying that they didn't even do good enough in debunking. They missed the fact that it still says that he would be born in the the final empire, which is the empire after the Greeks. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was gonna say though, I think that I've actually found some of their exegesis to be pretty convincing, even if I wouldn't agree that it's ex post facto. I would still say Daniel wrote Daniel, but for instance, with the 4 beasts that come out of the earth, right? These are all future to Daniel, and they're all contemporaneous. And so I think you can see them as the 4 kingdoms that come out of the empire that was won over by Alexander the Great. So you've got the Seleucids, the Ptolemies, and I forget the 2 others. And then really the Seleucid empires through whom you get Antiochus, who kind of fulfills that typology of the 8th and stuff like this. And
I think Daniel 8
I
think Daniel 8 and 9 and up into 11 is about that.
Yeah. No, I'm saying the 4 beasts in Daniel 7 though. I see those as those 4 Greek kingdoms. I think the liberals were kind of right about that. I just wouldn't give them the farmland. Basically.
Well, hold on. Let's go to that. So hold on. So you're saying Daniel what?
In chapter 7, the vision of the 4 beasts. A lot of people take that as like, what do they say? It's like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Whereas I would see it as, and you're going to find this generally more liberal commentaries.
Well, hold on. So you don't think it corresponds to Jeremiah?
What do you mean?
Well, Jeremiah, doesn't he have the same list? I'm trying to remember.
Ezekiel has.
No, I know that, but it's in Jeremiah. Yeah, Jeremiah has a list of beasts.
Okay.
And Jeremiah and Daniel, doesn't Jeremiah say that he, or does it? Daniel says that he read Jeremiah, or is it the other way around? I forget. But one of them says.
No, you're right. Yeah, Daniel reads Jeremiah's prophecy.
So, I'm saying that wouldn't that likely be the beast that he's referring to?
I don't remember. I feel like I've read it and then I've forgotten it. That point on Jeremiah. Do you remember the chapter that's in?
Well, I don't have a light in here. My light burned out, so I can't see anything. So hold on, let me see. I got my Bible here. I just can't see because there's no light. So let's see. I have in chapter 8. I think that's about Alexander and Antiochus. Chapter 7, I have that my notes are that it's about Jeremiah 4:7. Let me see if that's right. I just haven't looked at this in a while, so I'm a little rusty on it. But I think Jeremiah 4 is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's an old question for me too. I'm rusty as well, but I just heard some people talking about it, and it kind of got me thinking again. And then another one too. I was going to say.
Hold on. Let's before we move on, let's see what we're looking at here. So so he has Jeremiah has 4 beasts here listed, right? He's got declare in Judah, let it be heard in Jerusalem the trumpet. Assemble yourselves to the fortified city. Pick up and flee, Zion, hurry. I bring disaster from the north, destruction. The lion has come upon the den. He has made it desolate. Maybe this only mentions the lion. The lion is Babylon, Daniel 7:4. I think there's more beasts mentioned in Daniel. Maybe, is it Daniel 4 keeps mentioning beasts? I can't tell. I can barely see.
Are you asking?
Yeah, I just haven't read Jeremiah in a while, so. So the church fathers, according to Orthodox Study Bible, tend to think that the leopard is Alexander the Great. The lion is Babylon, and that cites Jeremiah 7 or 4 for Babylon. What do you think of that? And then
really it was because there's multiple things we can point to that are referred to as a lion, right? So I wouldn't be so quick to say.
No, but Jeremiah is
here.
Hold on, but Jeremiah is writing before the Babylonian, right?
Right.
The Jews losing the empire to the Babylonians. So,
I mean, I think you could just say that because these 4 beasts are future to Daniel, whereas the Babylonian Empire had already fallen by the time he sees this vision, that it wouldn't really match up. Because the Babylonians fall under one of Nebuchadnezzar's grandsons, a couple chapters earlier.
But what I'm saying is that he lists the 4 large beasts, and the first is a lion that has wings like an eagle. And I'm saying that why would he not be pulling from what he read in Jeremiah about the lion there that brings the destruction? Because the Babylonian he's not Daniel's not describing in Daniel 7 what is contemporary with him. Isn't he looking back to the previous beasts?
I'm seeing as he's getting a vision of the future, pretty much. Like, and he doesn't understand
hold on.
any kind of
Why do you
angel.
hold on? But why do you think that? I mean, what do you? Hold on. Whoa! Wait a minute. We're overlooking the obvious here. So the four beasts. Do you not think they correspond to the four levels of the statue?
Yes. I was trying to get to that earlier too. Because a lot of people associate those. But in Daniel 2, okay, so it's really interesting. The statue, you got the head of gold, the body of silver, the legs of bronze, and then the feet of iron and clay, right?
Sure. And
the whole idea is like it's like the most pure metal to like this thing it's unstable, it's gonna crumble.
Well, hold on. But it's not that difficult because we know from Daniel 2 that the last layer is where the Messiah is born, and that's the Roman Empire.
Well,
you don't believe
push
that?
Back on that. Yeah. Like I still obviously believe, in the kingdom of God and the Messiah coming, and like there is Christological things in Daniel. I just don't know if I just put that one in particular.
Whoa. Well, now we're getting into more dangerous territory. What do you mean you don't think that's about Christ?
Okay, so the statue, Nebuchadnezzar's reaction is, he thanks Daniel, right?
What is the stone? What is the stone cut out without that crushes the statue?
I mean, I guess you could say that's Christ. Like
you guess. I mean, it's a famous messianic prophet. What do you think? The New Testament says it's Jesus. What are you talking about?
But Jesus also doesn't come and destroy the Roman Empire, so I don't think that.
Yes, he does. He destroys it by his kingdom taking over the Roman Empire. That's what happens. It's familiar with church history, the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah, I mean that's a revival of it. That's not like a toppling of it.
It doesn't literally mean he destroys it like a apocalyptic chaos. It means that he destroys it through the preaching of the word. That's what if you read the Apocalypse. He goes out to conquer with the sword that proceeds from his mouth.
Right. The way I see the statue there is that it's basically a prophecy of the fall of Babylon. So you've got Nebuchadnezzar as the head of gold, because Daniel tells us. No,
you're totally wrong. It's four empires. It's four empires, and the Messiah comes under the fourth one. That's Rome. So this is like, you don't think that's a messianic prophecy?
Yeah, I'm just within the text itself. I think there's more clues.
It doesn't work. Hold on, that's not how we do it. We don't interpret the text in isolation as if. So you bought into higher critical scholarship. So you don't actually think this is a messianic book.
No, for instance, the fourth man in the flame, like that's Christ, and
well,
the Son of Man, like that's Christ.
So who is the stone cut out without hands? Who does the New Testament identify that as?
Peter refers to Christ as a rock, so you have that. I don't remember if it's
directly. You don't know what it's okay. All right, this is ridiculous. Yeah, so baffling to me to hear. I was kind of tracking with him initially, like, listen, okay, I can hear this, I can get this. But now he's like, no, that's not a messianic prophecy. All right, let's read this. So Daniel receives the vision of the statue. And it says that Nebuchadnezzar, this is what will happen in the latter days. The latter days is always a reference to the messianic era, right? It's when the fulfillment of these things, as Jesus says, right, all things written in the prophets will be fulfilled. And he says, here's your dream, Nebuchadnezzar. I saw your dream. He says, thoughts came into your mind, and it was about what would come to pass after this. He who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, the secret has been revealed because I have more wisdom than anyone. Not because I have more wisdom, but that you may know the thoughts of the heart. So basically saying that God's given me this. It's not, you were watching, behold, a great image. This image was splendor, with excellence stood before you. His form was awesome. The image was fine gold, its chest, arms of silver, its belly, thighs, bronze. So it's 4 metals all the way down to the iron and clay, which are the base of the statue. You watched while the stone was cut out without hands. It struck the image on its feet and broke them into pieces. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver. Jesus himself says, whoever falls on this stone will be crushed. Talking about himself. The stone cut out without hands is a reference to the Messiah and his divine origin. He's not a human creation. The stone struck the image on the feet and broke it into pieces. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver were all crushed together, and they became chaff like the threshing floor. And the stone that struck the mountain struck the image became a great mountain and filled the earth. Again, almost every church father, anybody I'm aware of, this is a prophecy of the church, which is the great mountain that fills the whole earth. Jesus came under the fourth of that fourfold division, the Roman Empire, which was the last, the feet of iron and clay. That's when Jesus was born. This is not like super technical, super hard to figure out. And his kingdom was set up under that Roman Empire. Not that hard, unless we want to be unbelieving, higher critical scholars, then we don't believe anything. This is the dream. These are kings, and the God of heaven has given you a kingdom. Wherever men shall dwell, the beasts of the field, the birds of heaven, he will give them into your hands, and he has made you rule over them all. You are this head of gold. So Nebuchadnezzar is the head. The Babylonian Empire is the head. After you, another kingdom will arise, then a third, and then the fourth is iron. This corresponds to Rome. Whereas you saw the feet and the toes, they will be divided. And yeah, we can debate exactly who the toes are. But the point is that in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. And it will not be left to another people. It will break in pieces. And it will consume. And it will stand forever. Who does anybody think is the kingdom of God that stands forever? It's the church. It's a prophecy of the church. Jesus sets up the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is predicted to be victorious. It conquers the Roman Empire exactly as this passage said it would. To me, it's odd that, I was just confused. So I guess he's just saying, no, it's not about a future Roman Empire. It's just about people underneath Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. Okay, but where's the kingdom of God set up at that time? Oh, well, I guess it's not, and I guess it's a false prophecy, or it's just a bunch of gibberish, right? Or it's predicting the church. So that's enough of that. Let's get to the super chats. So maybe I'll get my... I'm sorry I couldn't read the text better in here. It's super dark, but we'll have to get some new lights in here soon. Wood grain grip in sends $1, says finish this stream. Sean Curry $10, thanks Jay. John Vandersweet, we need an official wine mom wall of shame for all the worst arguments. Maybe they do get pretty wild up in here. Savas Masalitis $1, hello from Greece. What's up, dude? Hopefully things are good in Greece. Rigovich $10, I just want to say hello. Well, hello, Rigovich. Shout out to you. Val Kilmer right there, $5. Jay, thank you for doing these streams. I was Charismatic Sunday. Thanks. God bless. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much, Val. Appreciate that. Circle G, $5. What if you're a beautiful slow boy and you get lost in the complex writing style and languages of the church fathers? Well, take it slow and easy. There's no rush. You don't have to rush into the difficult church father texts. Try to find some of the easier texts first. And maybe rather than even jumping directly into the church fathers, try to read something like the Yaroslav Pelikan book, right? Like volume 1, that'll give you an introduction. And then you'll get familiar with some of the terminology. Expendable Empire, $10. I realized I was about to buy an overpriced cooler, and I wouldn't tip Jay. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, coolers and koozies do not come before what we do over here. Alan Matrix 99, $10. I've listened to the Trent Horn debate a couple times, and I don't understand what he means by doing your natural theology in reverse. I think what he was trying to argue was that, well, Jay, you're still using reasoning and logic when you do your tag apologetics, and reasoning and logic is just natural theology. Well, no, natural theology is not, quote, reasoning and logic. Okay? He's missing the whole point. Natural theology is defined as, even in John Paul's encyclical, Fides et Ratio, it's defined as arguing or theologizing or philosophizing about God apart from divine revelation. That's what natural theology is. So using logic and reason is not the equivalent of natural theology. And you'll notice throughout that debate, Trent just kept equivocating and equating, quote, natural theology with all kinds of different things. Oh, you're using logic? That's natural theology. Oh, you're making an argument? That's natural theology. No, that's not what natural theology is. We define the parameters very clearly at the beginning of the debate. BMX 1966, $25. Thank you so much. Appreciate that fat super chat, $25. Our longtime buddy, supporter, super chatter there. Appreciate you, BMX. Rolf Stakes, $5. Thank you for the stream. Can you explain what happened in the Westminster Confession tradition? Did they start removing gospel books from the canon? No, I think that the Westminster Confession tradition is just going to follow Luther. Because Calvin, if you're not aware, Calvin was a humanist. And a humanist is not the same thing as what we think of as humanism. The Renaissance humanist tradition was a wide movement amongst scholars like Lorenzo Valla, for example, who did good work. I don't agree with everything necessarily, but Valla did good work, for example, in exposing a lot of papal forgeries. And other Renaissance humanists, they weren't just Protestants. Many of them were Catholic, right? Like Erasmus. Erasmus was a humanist. And all they were doing was saying, hey, it's time for us to get some degree of textual studies going because there's a lot of medieval forgeries. And there was also a desire to return to the ancient texts. And so, Calvin, Luther, those people, Erasmus as well, they learned Greek and Hebrew because they wanted to go back to the texts. So humanism is part of the reason that they went about this in this way. And that's what led them, for example, to say, well, which canon as Protestants are we going to accept? Well, Jerome did not have a high view of the Deuterocanon. He still cited it, but he didn't necessarily think it was canonical because Jerome agreed with Jews that we should follow the Masoretic text. Now, the Roman Catholic Church did not end up going with Jerome. But the Protestants said, well, why don't we just go with the Jews, the Masoretic text, and Jerome? So that's part of the reason that they have the Protestant canon. So I don't think that like the Westminster Confession, people just started removing books. They were just kind of committed to this humanist approach of returning to the original source text or what they thought were the source texts. I heard you mention this offhand in a debate with a Protestant. Yeah, so that's what I was probably referring to. But I mean, I don't think it's wrong to say that Luther and Protestants just threw out books of the Bible. I mean, that's basically what they did. Turtle Items, $1. Would you debate the politics and religion server again? I mean, I'm not 100% opposed per se, but I mean, do they want to debate philosophy? I mean, usually when we open it up in there, it's just a bunch of like teenage atheists. So I don't know. It's basically, I don't know. Well, we'll see. RV Schwartz, $100. Thank you so much. Wow, that's a crazy fat super chat. I've never sent a super chat before. I want to thank you for expanding my understanding of God, bringing me closer to Him. Thank you. Well, hey man, thank you so much. That's a really generous super chat. You didn't have to give that much. Kind of humbled by that, but thank you so much. Tenfold Hack Girl, $25. I want to say thank you and appreciate you taking my call. Well, thank you, Tenfold Hack Girl. Appreciate your questions. Sorry I didn't remember enough about Fratelli Tutti off the top of my head, but you refreshed my memory. And I remember all the social justice nonsense in it now. Average, a liberal zealot. Spengler, Sorrell, Schmidt, Giovanni Gentile. The illiberal reaction of right and left. What are your views? I've read a little bit of Schmidt and I read a little bit of Spengler. I've not read Gentile or Alan Sorrell. So I like Spengler. He has interesting approaches to history that kind of remind me of Daniel. But I also think that it's unfortunate that Spengler is basically a historical relativist. So there's insights there. And, we covered Spengler when we were talking about Tavistock because Tavistock read Spengler in order to weaponize it, which is pretty wild. Remember, guys, to head on over to chalk.com. I wish the light hadn't burned out because I could tell you how awesome it is to get over to chalk.com and get access to those wonderful supplements that you see here at Chalk. And you want to use the promo code J50 and you get 50% off any of these wonderful products over at Chalk. They are the best supplements out there. 7 Wonders is great for nutrient deficient diets. We need to use these supplements to make up for what's lacking in terms of our nutrients. Use the promo code J50 to get 50% off all these great products. I do recommend the Male Vitality Stack, especially the Tonkat Ali. You also get the daily, the Ashwagandha. The stacks are great because if you don't really know what you want to get, you can kind of test it out with getting stacks for men. There's stacks for women. There's female vitality here. That stack is available. You don't have to get the whole stack. You can test out individual products. I would say if you want to test out the Ashwagandha or the Tonkat Ali if you're a guy. Those are all testosterone boosting products. Use the promo code J50 to get 50% off anything over at Chalk. And also use the promo code J53LIFE. That's J53LIFE if you want to get recurring subscriptions, which I do recommend. So thank you guys. Appreciate all that. And I kind of wish the Muslim dude would come back.